Boob, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto becomes members of Peerage family. Highschool DxD part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. The first thing he felt was shock, the other was disbelief at the fact that he was staring at what appeared to be some sort of level up, like in a video game. He tried rubbing his eyes, thinking it was just a lack of sleep he got last night, but when he opened them, God damn it, he released a sight at the still present screen? Window? He had no clue what it was, but he was calling it a window. So he stood up and after reading the window he closed it and then went to take a shower. He really needed one right now. Minutes later he emerged from the shower, his bright blonde hair stuck to his face with beads of water slowly dripping down his skin. His bright blue eyes observed his room. It was nothing fancy nor special. It had a bed in one corner with sheets messily sprawled all over. On the opposite side he had a desk with an ordinary computer which he used for playing various games and for studying. His closet was fairly large and held everything from his student uniform to any other clothing he may need. Now with a fresh mind and body he decided he should figure out whatever the hell that was. He had defeated Pain, and after a lengthy conversation between students, he had managed to convince Nagato, who was the real Pain, to revive everyone. And so he left the cave he was in and was on the path to Konoha through the forest when he noticed an odd sensation in the air. One he was sure he wouldn't be able to sense without Sage Mode. It felt like the air was leaving a small, seemingly forgotten part of the woods. A weird sensation filled his body. He got the feeling like he was sinking and being twisted at the same time in every direction and then squished to the size of a needle. He could feel every hair on his hoodie stand up with every step he took towards this anomaly or whatever the hell it was. As G got yet closer he realized he should probably wait for Kakashi-sensei. He could feel him coming towards his location, but he couldn't face him right now, not after he failed to protect him. So as steeled will he continued forward into the darker part of the forest where he could feel the ominous sensation change from light to heavy, as in I can actually feel it kind of heavy. It made his insides twist, his heart pump 1,000 times, he could feel his breaths become desperate as he came next to this consuming darkness coming from whatever was in the forest. After think about it, worrying about his friends and other things he decided that he will inspect the damn thing. So he tried to shove his hand into it, and watched as nothing happened. Blinking in confusion he tried to pull his arm away, keyword being tried, as the blasted whole dark thing held onto his hand with a grip of fucking steel. Oh come on! Shouted the blonde in growing frustration and desperation as he dug his feet deeper into the dirt to try and pry his arm out of whatever that thing was. His resistance proved futile as the space anomaly seemed to pull him in harder and harder. Until Naruto. The last and only thing he would see from his home was the worried and hawked face of his teacher as his hand reached out to try and grab him from the dark void and failing. After that was kind of hazy, but he woke up in a hospital with doctors saying his bill was paid off by some anonymous benefactor. He thanked them, whoever they were. After hauling his ass out of that place of awful memories he thought about trying to go back, only to find the place empty of any anomalies after he got to the place where he fell, and so after a moment of depression he decided he should keep as low of a profile as possible and try to get as much information as he could to try and find a way to get back home. Up until today he was trying to live as much of a normal life as he could. He did manage to open up a ramen store, trying to play the role of a normal person and figure out where the heck he even was before he was ultimately caught by a police officer. Yeah. He said about something like anyone under 18 must attend school or something like that. So he was forced to attend the nearest school, which just so happened to be Ko Academy. He did manage to get enough money to buy a computer, and after some embarrassingly long time he figured out how to use it and play video games. Surprisingly, he would read books from time to time with no particular favorite. He lived in a neighborhood that was relatively close to the school, and the ramen shop he owned made him good money to pay for his bills, food and clothes. So for something as bizarre like this to show up, well, it wasn't like it was the weirdest thing he ever saw. But hey, it might actually help him get back home, he hoped. Anyway, after clearing his mind, he spoke the words and another window greeted him. If you don't know who or what Gaia is, then read up about it in the library. More specifically, read about the Gaia theory. That isn't really that important right now though. The most important fact for you to know is that you have been given an ability known as the Gamer Dot. Great. Now this damn box/window thing is giving me homework. Naruto bemoaned. He got enough of that at the academy. The gamer is a powerful ability, given only to those deemed worthy by Gaia. Across multiple parallel universes, realities and worlds, only a small handful of people are deemed worthy of holding this power, so consider yourself honored. Yeah, The damn box power is strong. Naruto groused, now tell me what it can do. Okay, obligatory impressive speech, over. Now we get to the meat of the matter. The gamer has the ability to turn repeated actions into skills. It doesn't matter what you can do, fire lasers, swing swords, fly, or whatever else. Anything can be turned into skills, even something as mundane as washing the dishes. They can, however, also be acquired through the shop via special tokens dropped in dungeons. That's really weird. Naruto's sweat dropped as he read the last part. Washing dishes? Seriously? Well, at least the dungeon sounds cool and useful too. He could probably use it to grind money if his shop ever fails, or the other source of income slowed, which he seriously doubted that it would. Almost uniformly, all aspects of the gamer are invoked verbally, as you have no doubt surmised by now, but they can also be invoked mentally. You have at several pages with information and abilities that you can invoke merely by saying the name of the page. First, the status page. This displays several things: your stats and perks, your current level and your current HP and MP/SP/CP, as well as your flaws, special status, inventory, and currently equipped equipment. Next is the skills page. This displays all the skills you have learned, as well as their current level, a small description of what they do and their effects. The perks page shows you your current perks and their effects, while the flaws page shows you all of the current flaws that you have, as well as their effects, negative or otherwise. The quests page shows you all the quests you are currently undergoing, as well as the quests you have completed in the past. Finally, the reputation page shows you your standing with various people, groups, leaders, factions, and deities. Naruto blinked at this. It was a lot to take in, but the blonde ninja suspected that this would be very, very useful once he actually knew what the hell all of that blurb meant. There's one final thing to inform you of, gamer. Every single person who receives this power has had one of three reactions. Some choose to try and ignore their power and carry on as they did before they were granted this power. That never turns out well. Some become a force for good or evil using this power. The majority of people who receive this power take this route, although not many survive taking the evil route for some reason. The final route people choose to go is that of the original and first wielder of this ability, survival. Regardless of which path you choose to walk, life as you once knew it is gone, never to return. You could at least sound sympathetic, you bastard. Naruto huffed indignantly. Now, this concludes the introduction. Kindly read the rest of the guide for more detailed information on all that has been mentioned previously. More information will be added as you discover more aspects of your ability. All that is left is for me to wish you good luck as the chosen gamer of your world. The Game Master. Hanji-han. Hanji-han? Naruto was sure he never heard of that guy before. Oh well, I guess I'll first start with seeing just what exactly this thing can do, excitedly thought the blonde as he imagined several scenarios where this power could potentially prove to be useful. At Ko Academy, homeroom. Ugh, I forgot about school, complained Naruto in his head while also crying twin streams of tears, like he was an anime character. So with his head planted onto his arms, he decided that he could use this time to find more information about this power, but so far all he had was the introduction, which he had already written. So he decided to check out his stats, and he was kind of surprised by what he saw. Naruto Uzumaki, LVE1. You were a ninja in another world, when one morning you unlock something known as the Gamer. A power that is obviously one out of a video game, but you have no idea where you got it from or whom. Origin Gamer. Class Ninja. Titles None. HP 10500. CP 9500. MP 9500. STR 20. Def 20. SP 18. Int 10. Wis 11. Luke? And apparently he had really good stats even though he was level 1, maybe it was a restriction. Now to check out if I have any skill dash. Something just poked him. And he definitely knew what or rather who that something was, so after checking if the teacher was watching him he turned around to confront the perpetrator of his assault. And of course who else would the attacker be? It was none other than the class president Yuki Nanaka. Yuki is a beautiful young woman with a slim yet endowed build with a far more notable big butt. She has light blue, shoulder-length hair that has a longer portion of her hair put into a braid on the left side of her face tied into a single braid, as well as a single long strand of hair and yellow eyes. Not that he knew that by peeping at her, He wasn't like the perverted trio. It just so happens that his addiction, as Shio so bluntly put it, for video games made Yuki chase after him to give him after-school lessons which he didn't want. And it also made 2 members of the school council, Tsubaki Shinra and Momo Hanakai, to join the chase after the, in their words, rule-breaking delinquent so that they may punish him accordingly. He did shiver at the brunette's slightly sadistic look and Momo's equally scary gaze. Naruto-san, could you please focus your attention towards the teacher's lesson? You know you need to keep up with your grades. Softly the brunette reprimanded the blonde who evaded her attempts at capture with ease, which she did give respect for as she was no slouch. However, it did baffle her how he was able to evade her and the 2 council members after him. You know I can't care enough to listen to what that old crone speaks. When will we ever need to know about some math formula and anything else but math? Honestly, I have no idea how you managed to listen to this guy blab all day, Naruto hotly whispered back to Yuki as he gave her a half-hearted glare to which the girl simply responded with her blunt gaze. Naruto-san, it is very important for a student to have positive grades, and for that you need to attend your classes and take notes. And you should certainly not be at that internet cafe playing video games. While it is amusing to see you actually put effort into something, I would hope you put that same passion towards studying. The blue-haired president wasted no time to deflect his claims. She wished he actually tried to study, which is why she wanted him to, at least, let her give him study sessions to make up for his absence in class. She really worried for his future and didn't want to see the cheerful blonde out on the streets, like some sort of hobo. Naruto observed as the brunette's eyes shifted from agitation to worry, then to sadness, as she seemingly started right at him. Was Ahe actually worried about him? Did she really care so much for his future? Yuki, you don't have to worry so much about it. I'll find a job somewhere with or without school. He tried to placate her worries and watched as her eyes widened and focused back on his words. I know that I may not be a picture-perfect student, but hey, I'm passing, aren't I? He offered the girl a happy smile to hopefully ease her worry. She smiled, a small yet happy smile, he noted. Meanwhile, Yuki noticed that the blonde student was intently staring at her, his sparkling blue eyes observing every feature of her face. Speaking of his face, she couldn't help but observe his features. The way his spiky blonde hair framed his face and how his eyes shined with joy whenever he talked about the various games he played. She was happy that the blonde was so cheerful and how his pranks, despite their chaotic nature, made the school much more lively than it was. She mentally sighed as she shook her head. She had a mission here, and she was damn sure going to accomplish it. Naruto-san, after classes end we are going to go back to my house. And we will make sure you are caught up with everyone else. To his surprise, she spoke with great determination, dead set on making him attend her sessions. Too bad he had this weird new power to explore. He wouldn't mind spending time with Yuki. He just hated that it had to be over school of all things. Seriously, why couldn't it be over some ramen? Fine, I'll go with you to these sessions. Just stop poking my ribs for God's sake. He tried not yell too loudly, as between her speech and his thoughts, she had poked him a couple more times, which made his already painful ribs ache that much more. Yuki looked pleased, and it was whether because he agreed to go to one of her lessons or something else, he didn't know. But what he did know was that he had some skills to check out. So without wasting time, he yelled skills in his mind, hoping to see what he currently had. And boy, it had something all right. Skills. Shadow Clone, mastered. This jutsu was created by the second Hokage for training, information gathered, and espionage. It consumes 150 CP per clone created, and with your reserves you can use this day and night, and not get tired. When dispelled, all clones will relay their memories back to their creator, including any and all exhaustion they may experience. However, they cannot relay any muscle training besides muscle memory. For every clone dispelled, gain 10 CP. Every clone dispelled grants a 10% EXP bonus while leveling skills. Chakra cost reduced by 40%. When he read the description for the shadow clones, he was absolutely baffled at its abilities, as he was sure it didn't have those before. Maybe it's an add-on. Rasengan, mastered. This jutsu was created by your father and taught to you by your godfather Jiraiya. Its sphere made of spiraling chakra wick spins in every direction and is self-sustainable in power. CP cost reduced by 95%. Damage increased by 70%. Chance to inflict bleeding status 65%. Chance to inflict disoriented status 60%. He let out a whistle at the effects the Rasengan could dish out. Would be useful against their opponents or someone with a healing factor, but when was he going to encounter one of those? Rasen Shuriken LV5, your own personal jutsu that combines the Rasengan and your wind affinity, creating this beauty of molecular destruction. CP cost is reduced by 30%, increased to 50% in Sage mode. Damage increased by 10% and is stackable up to 100x, increased to 200x in Sage mode. Chance to inflict bleeding status 75% to 85% while in Sage mode. Chance to damage opponent's chakra pathways 80%. Chance to paralyze opponent 1%. He let out an unsteady gasp of air as his eyes widened to unimaginable size after he read the description for the Raisin Shuriken. Man, if he thought the Rasengan abilities were broken, then this was just unfair. He hoped he had something else besides just hurt people attacks. Observe, mastered, the ability to see and observe anything the user wishes. It can show various information from abilities of any opponent, their level, their stats and perks, to a weapon's stats, buffs and special skills. Coupled with gamer's mind and gamer's body, this ability is a must-have for any gamer. Gamer's mind mastered, this passive ability calms the user's mind in stressful situations and may even remove the capability to feel fear. It also protects their mind from any negative status effects and abilities and lets the user calmly analyze the situation at hand. Gamer's body mastered, with this active your body will always be in its peak, that be for training or for war, you'll be ready for it. It keeps your muscles from deteriorating or atrophying in case of a coma, provides the user with the best metabolism possible and a healthy lifespan. So that was why he felt more energized than usual. It would appear that he was geared and ready for any task at hand, now only if school could finish so he could get to grinding. Sage mode mastered, learn from the toads of Mount Maiboku. This skill lets the user gather and manipulate nature energy to use in hand-to-hand combat, infuse it into attacks to make them stronger, increase sensing abilities, damage, defense and chakra. Increase user's CP by 1000 for every 10% nature chakra. Increase defense by 30. Increase attack by 30. Increase speed by 30. Cost of all senjutsu attacks reduced by 30%. Well, that's super cool. Reading through all this with shining eyes, Naruto couldn't help but be excited for more techniques he could learn via this power. The possibilities were endless. Oh look, it also had his seal mastery as well. Seal Master Basic. You're a basic seal master with enough knowledge to make storage seals, explosive seals and OK barrier seals, but anything beyond that is out of reach. Reduce CP cost when using seals by 20%. Seals last 5x longer. Seals can be set to use nearby nature energy instead of chakra locked. Well, basic but useful, although why is this last one locked? He was honestly confused about that one. Maybe he needed to have a better understanding of seals. School hallway. Well, that was uninteresting. It was just an hour of the teacher talking on and on about some war that happened a long time ago, and how these other guys made this big-ass bomb that made Japan surrender. While interesting, he was sure he could read that anywhere else, so it was boring, and he was sure others felt the same. Hell, most of the boys only focused on any girl they could get their eyes on. And sure, all of them were real pretty, but it didn't really matter to them. What did matter was how big their bazongas were. And those three guys, they just made his head ache so much at how uncontrolled they were. He even caught them trying to steal from the girls' locker room once. He let out a chuckle at the memory of the beating they got from the kendo club after that one. They couldn't look at them for weeks. Kaya. While he was occupied by his thoughts, he failed to notice the feminine figure, so they inevitably crashed. After taking a moment to recover, he stood on his feet as he looked at the girl he unintentionally bumped into. The first thing that stood out was her gorgeous long crimson hair, as it was strewn all over the place from their impact. He could also see she had a very generous figure, sporting that he could compare to Granny Tsunade's, along with narrow hips and long and slender legs, while she sported a slightly pale skin tone which seemed to make her even more gorgeous, and her ass was also great, not that he could see it underneath the skirt. After snapping himself from his suddenly lewd thoughts, he took a step forward and brought a hand forward and now about it, and decided he should be a gentleman and apologize. So he spoke, "I'm so sorry for bumping into. My thoughts were captivated by the sight of your captivating figure and divine beauty." As he tried and successfully pulled off a polite speech, he took the girl's hand, proceeded to pull her up, and kissed the hand which he was holding. Now that caught the young girl off guard, as, for one, no one spoke with such honesty towards her, with most people having some sort of hidden agenda, and yet she stared at those crystal clear pools of blue and found no lie or deceit within. Coughing slightly, she replied, "Well, I accept your apology, and am quite flattered by your words. Very few people that I've spoken to have said anything without some sort of hidden interest or selfish desire, so your compliment is much appreciated." Out of nowhere, she realized that she hadn't introduced herself to this, admittedly, attractive boy. "Oh, where are my manners? My name is Rias Gremery and a third year. What about yourself?" She shook his hand as she questioned the blonde, who gave her a broad smile. "Well, it wouldn't be rude of me to decline such a question, especially if it's from someone as charming as yourself. Very well, Rias. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I'm a second-year student at his name. The girl's eyes widened to the size of footballs. This was the Naruto Uzumaki. The same Naruto everyone labeled as a delinquent who beats up anyone that annoyed him, fights gangsters like it's a daily chore, pulled hilarious and complex pranks on the student council and gets away with it. Well, I guess all those rumors seemed to be simple hot air. Naruto essayed before she could continue. He raised his hand. Ah, please, Rias, may I call you that? He received a nod in response. Although he missed her shocked face at someone asking to call her by her name, it was refreshing. Rias, call me Naruto. I dislike formalities between friends. He smiled at her even greater shock. Was it that weird to have friends? Friends? She questioned, trying to confirm his words. Yes, friends, he replied with a teasing smirk. Is it that hard to understand, dear Rias? Said smirk widened into a wide grin as he saw her try to hide her glowing cheeks by haughtily turning her head away. She humphed. Well, I guess you should be grateful someone as beautiful as me is your friend. Naruto, she spoke in a fake arrogant tone, and quickly corrected herself before he could. And maybe as thanks, you should treat me to a meal or maybe to shopping? She joked with a smug smirk, expecting him to get embarrassed and stutter. What she didn't expect was for him to smirk back and, well, since you asked so nicely, as a gentleman I have to adhere and take you out to dinner. He spoke with playful words, teasing words while she blushed from head to toe and released steam from her ears. So will Saturday at 1:30 p.m. be okay? He continued jokingly before taking a step back to avoid her swinging arm. He smiled at her frustration at her being unable to hit him, while she tried with more vigor to wipe off that annoying yet somehow warm smile. After a few minutes of composure, she fixed her outfit and placed her hair back into place before looking him in the eyes. Now about that lunch you offered, she replied before her tone changed to one of pain and sadness. I can't go this Saturday, mostly because I'll be swamped with paperwork. She felt the cold chill go throughout her body at the thought of that damned hell. It was at times like these that she pitted her Oni-sama, as no one should go through that. Naruto meanwhile was struggling to keep in his laughter, and somehow he was keeping it together while his shoulders rocked up and down at the redhead's misery. So with a quick breath he calmed down and gave his words of encouragement to her. Don't worry, Rias, I believe you'll be able to get it done by next Saturday. As he spoke, his words calmed her mind and soul. It felt good to hear actual cheer up instead of the fake ones she heard come out of many high-class nobles. She smiled for a minute before she realized Naruto was also insulting her, to which she smacked his shoulder. Oh! What the hell was that for, Rias? He whined as his skin stung slightly from her hand smacking him. Her response was an attempt at a glare and an adorable pout that he chuckled at. At said noise, the red-haired princess whined and complained while she repeatedly hit Naruto with deliberately weak hits. He responded by tickling her stomach, which elected bursts of laughter from the grenier, and she stopped her own attack to defend from the onslaught of tickles. I guess it's settled then, Rias, he spoke after he calmed down from so much laughter. I'll meet you here next Saturday for dinner. He finished with a brilliant smile that made the redhead turn her face to hide the sudden fact that her face was heating up so much. Curse his good looks and caring nature. After composing herself, she turned back around and spoke with Gideon. She didn't know she had, of course, Naruto-kun. However, he didn't like how her face darkened as her tone dropped. You better not take me out to a little stand and call it a day. That would be very rude to a lady like myself. Got it? Oh God, she was very scary with that very sweet smile on her face. It kind of reminded him of his mother. What did she say about girls again? Anyway, he decided to simply nod at her not-so-hidden threat. Rias was happy that the blonde understood clearly her warning. Now she hoped her queen heard not even a word of this conversation. Well, Naruto, I have some club business to take care of, so I'll see you tomorrow. She offered him a smile which broke his train of thoughts. Oh yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. To Rias he smiled back. Not one of his wide ones, but an honest one. It made her feel weird, but not in a bad way, and she could feel herself smiling Corey as she waved goodbye to the happy blonde. The next day was much of the same. He woke up, did his morning routine, and went off to school. After yesterday, he really wanted to explore the dungeons and see what they could offer. Maybe they had some sort of technique or skill that could let him space travel? Or possibly some kind of device? He didn't know what he could get, but he was very excited to find out, and there was also that sudden date with Rias too. Oh God, he hoped to any God-willing listen that he doesn't fuck that up. He could already see the outcries of the angry coast students, arms raised with torches and pitchforks ready to strike him down with their rage. He let out a sound of amusement at the thought of so many fans outraged simply because he said something wrong or did something incorrectly. What right do they have on judging others when they can't take being judged by someone else? On his was he passed many students who just generally talked about whatever was happening or what currently interested them. Some were talking about club activities and certain others talked about their activities. There were also bullies, but they weren't anything special. They were overall the typical jock with big muscles and broad shoulders, and they were looking at him and snickering while sending him weird glances to which he paid no mind. Honestly, he had better things to do than to worry over some muscle-headed idiots being idiots, so he ignored them and went his own way. Class? As usual, classes were boring and dull, with teachers going forever about history and numbers and how it will help prepare you for the future bullshit. Oh, how he hated those people. Thank God Yuki was here, or else he'd be bored out of his mind. Poke. And speak of the DL. Stop poking me, he whispered hotly as he rubbed his hurting ribs. It really wasn't fun being poked every day, he would know. Sorry, Uzumaki, but it's the only way I could get your attention, plus I can see that something is bothering you, so what is it? The brunette apologized and immediately asked at the same time, while the whiskered boy groaned quietly as the girl looked at him unblinkingly. Yuki, don't get me started, he complained as he rolled his eyes and began to rant. I have a job I should be working at, but because of some dumb police officer I'm forced to attend school. At that mark the girl blinked a few times before opening her mouth to speak, but was stopped as he continued. Then I have to deal with the student council as they try to catch me for my pranks, and almost every incident is blamed on me. Luckily I always have an alibi. He smirked at the thought of a disappointed Sona and her lackeys. That seems reasonable, she replied, understanding the blue-eyed male's plight, but I feel like there is more than what you say, she finished with a suspicious and also narrow gaze, to which he sighed in defeat. Well, I kinda, he trailed off, not knowing how to tell the girl about his sudden date with the school's most popular girl. Meanwhile, Yuki sat there brewing in her own thoughts. What could it be? Could he be asking me out? Oh, that would be so weird. And yet I don't mind it? What if he already has a girlfriend? How will I react to that? What if he knows about my mission? The girl screamed her thoughts as she tried to understand what the blonde wanted to tell her. However, she didn't expect him to tell her something so shocking. Well, I kinda have a date with Rias next Saturday, he awkwardly told the girl as he rubbed the back of his neck with a smile that didn't seem to stretch all the way. The brunette, however, was a different story. She could feel her chest constrict and get tighter and tighter as a weird feeling began to bubble within her. However, Yuki, being Yuki, ignored the weird feeling and looked back at her companion, who was awkwardly waiting her response, to which she would gladly oblige. So you are asking me about dating advice, Uzumaki? Didn't expect you to be the type to ask a girl out, she gave her reply in that trademark uninterested yet cold tone, all the while wondering what this feeling within her was, as she wasn't accustomed to this sensation. Naruto meanwhile was pouting at her words. What the hell does that mean, Yuki? You think I can't ask a girl out? He spoke while trying to keep as low a tone as he possibly could so as to not alter the teacher or the class. Which failed whoops. So he faced the middle-aged man as he started at him with a gaze. Oh, 1,000 suns. So Uzumaki, do you wish to tell us what is so interesting about Miss Yuki? He questioned with a raised eyebrow while the blonde broke out in a sweat and began to sputter words of denial and how the teacher must have heard wrong, which only made him angrier. Enough with your babbling. Get your ass to detention, now! He shouted so loud that he was straining enough to glow red with fury. So, with a shrug of his shoulders, Naruto packed his stuff and slung his back while waving at his classmates, and a quick bye before he left the classroom to not go to detention and instead go to the school roof to try watching clouds like Shikamaru. And minutes after climbing many stairs he arrived at his destination. However, he did not expect to meet another person up here. After debating in his mind for a few seconds, he decided to approach the not-so-mystery person, lazily dropping his bag next to the doors, and slowly went towards them. He could see the person, a girl, he noted, had a petite body, very feminine with great curves at certain places while still holding an air of femininity, and when he looked more closely, a body trained for fighting. He could see her short white hair sway with the gentle wind as she appeared to be eating something whilst listening to music, evident by her headphones and phone next to her. With a sigh of relief he sat down, took a single glance at his companion, then returned to gazing at the bright sun and clear sky, and he was able to keep his cool for a few minutes. Hey, what could he do? It was very boring without company. So senpai, are you going to introduce yourself? Finally the girl talked after minutes, now looking at him. And he in return could clearly see her dull hazel slanted eyes, along with a soft face framed by two long bangs going down to her shoulders. Her clothes were the standard Cove female uniform minus the shoulder cape and short socks instead of the full thigh highs. Well? She asked as she looked at him with a curious gaze, her eyes unblinking and her expression as neutral as can be. Sorry about that. I'm Uzumaki Naruto and I like making friends, ramen and training. I hate anyone who hurts my precious people, those who betray loved ones and family, and the time it takes to cook ramen. I mean seriously, I want my food now, not when it's half cold. He introduced himself before going on a rant about ramen being the food of the gods, and how it should be a crime not to eat it. Her response was a hum. Whether it was in agreement or not was questionable. You know, it's common courtesy to introduce yourself, he smiled cheekily as the girl blinked once, then twice before finally speaking. My name is Tuju Kaneko-senpai, and she spoke still with the dullest tone he has ever heard. Well, nice to meet you, Nico-chan, although please call me Naruto. Being called senpai feels weird, he slightly shuddered while the young girl paused, gave him a look, before going back to her treat. During this, Naruto thought about his family. What would they say? Would they be proud? He had lived without a family for all his life, and after 17 years he finally met them in his mindscape. Hey Kaneko, he spoke after a while, causing the girl to pause mid-bite of a chocolate bar and glance at him. You ever live without family? He asked completely out of nowhere as the petite girl rapidly blinked. You ever think, wouldn't it be nice if I had a family? To care, love, and protect someone? Kaneko was silent as she listened to her senpai talk about family. I like to think my parents would be proud of me. That dad will smile and say, good job, son. You've grown into a fine man. Or something similar. And my mom? Oh man, would she start asking questions? He let out an amused laugh at the thought, an image of his mother rapid-firing questions from how are you doing in school, to when will I get grandchildren. And whilst Naruto was in imagination land, Kaneko stared at the sun as she thought about her own family. She had no idea where the man who was supposed to be her father was. Probably either left or died, and according to her sister, their mom died after giving birth to her. Meanwhile her sister, she shook her head rapidly, best not to remember what her sister did. Finally remembering that she wasn't alone, she decided to answer the whiskered blonde's questions. I would like to have a family, senpai. Her words seemed to bring him back to reality, as he looked down at her, looking deep into her own eyes. Actually, now that she looked as well, she could see how his whisker marks made him resemble a fox if he looked hard enough. Her gaze met his own as analyzing blue met empty gold, but she felt as if he was staring less into her eyes and more into her soul, as if he was observing her very person. And so they sat there gazing at each other without a blink. The wind blew past them, making their hair sway to and fro with the sun shining down upon them. Going lower, she could see the way his shirt stuck to his chest, showing off his chiseled abs and other muscles that pressed against it. His arms were also well built, not too big yet not thin either, and even low dash. Kaneko, you there? She could register the worried words of her senpai. However, her eyes widened at the close proximity of their faces, and her view of his crystal blue eyes showed his obvious concern, as if reading an open book. So she looked away so he couldn't see her expression. She had an image to maintain after all. I'm fine, son. Before she could finish, she was cut off by his serious expression. Yes? Kaneko, from now on I told you to stop calling me senpai. He almost hugged her to death at the way she tilted her head in confusion. But he kept his cool. Yeah, I know it's probably weird, but I don't want you to call me senpai. Feels like you're forcing yourself. Just call me Naruto like everyone else. His jovial tone made the girl look at him in semi-surprise. She couldn't help but crack a small, tiny, really smile. She felt warm and safe around him. It was known by everyone, and she meant everyone, that Naruto would kick anyone's ass if they hurt those he cared for. So with some, great reluctance, she let herself relax in his presence. WWHST was that? She quickly opened her eyes to see Naruto's bigger hand on her head, rubbing it. Her lips thinned as her eyes narrowed in confusion in whether to hit him or let him continue. However, any decision she might have had was wiped away when she looked back at that dazzling smile, so yet again she let herself relax. Recess. Well, that was fun, grinned our protagonist as he walked through the halls and past many people as he thought about skipping the next class or not. Said class was P.E. and he got enough of that from the student council, and Yuki wasn't there, so it was a win-win for him. Now comes the matter of what will he do? Go home and play his currently favorite game with some friends he met online? Or should he see what this gamer thing was all about? Oh sure, it sounds like a video game-based ability, but he didn't know if it was an RPG, a shoot-'em-up, Rouge-like, or some other genre of gaming. Imagine if he got cooking of all things. Not the best for fighting or anything besides cooking, really, so yeah, he hoped it was a good one, and he doesn't need to worry. While he was thinking on his power, he failed to notice a figure approaching, and with him not paying attention. G.U.H. Gah! The two had collided with each other. Looking at the guy, he could see he was a stereotypical gang member with bulky muscles, a bandana tied around his head with a tattoo on his forearm. Black shirt with a light blue jacket, black pants and shoes, and what seemed to be a pipe of some sort. Behind him was another guy in a bulk suit, white shirt underneath along with a dark blue tie. Finishing his outfit were matching pants and B-CK dress shoes. The man himself was cleanly shaven, a clean haircut, and sharp black eyes. What caught his eye was the ring on his right middle finger. He was so going to check it out after he kicked both their asses. However, before anything else, his vision was obstructed by the larger bulky dude. "Hey punk, watch where you're going or I'll beat you to paste," fumed the man angrily, and yet to Naruto it looked like he was a child throwing a tantrum for not having its way. So he decided to shut the man up by walking up to him and giving him an almost killing punch, almost because it would just render him unconscious for either a day or a few. However, the big guy's companion couldn't contain his shock at seeing the grunt, because let's face it, it's what he was, get knocked out like a light by a random kid. He have to report this to his boss. Who knows what's gonna happen if the boy fin dash. He fell down with a thud as he was decked in the face by Naruto, who looked at both without a care in the world. He would have walked away, but he would kiss out on whatever these guys had, plus he wanted to see what that ring was. So after a quick search he found his wallet, filled with wads of cash, a pair of keys which is observed labeled as quest item? Weird. The bulky dude also had a bit of cash on him, but that wasn't as important as the main thing, the ring. It looked like an ordinary ring, yet it had a gold band with some sort of black gem embedded in it with some weird star mark. Wonder what that's about. Oh well, not his problem, so with a shrug of his shoulders he put the ring in his pocket, before blinking a few times. He could swear he felt he was being watched. Deciding to turn around, he looked for any potential observers and thankfully found none. So with a happy whistle he went on his merry way. Not that further away, however, was the Occult Research Clubhouse, and within we could see 3 figures. One of said figures was our redhead princess Rias Gremory, and she was observing Naruto's battle, if it could even be called that. She knew there was something different about the blonde, yet she had no faint idea of what. And she could feel the difference because when she met him, it was like staring into a void and all you saw was nothing, pure emptiness, but now she could feel whatever that was. It was natural and yet it felt unnatural, as if it belonged just not here. It also felt weak, but she could see the power it held. What could he possibly be so important for Blondie to skip school? She could hear the teasing tone of Akino's voice, who was her queen, as every word was spoken. Maybe he is going to see a secret lover? She questioned and was sending her weird looks with that smile that just unnerved her. It gave her shivers. Akino-san, maybe we shouldn't be so nosy in Naruto-san's private business. Maybe he has family he needs to take care of? Kiba, her knight, tried to convince the black-haired girl, and by her failing attempts to conceal her guiling, he failed. I don't get it. First he has nothing and then he has something. Rias vented her frustrations out loud, hoping to understand what exactly the blonde had, and out of nowhere as well. Maybe Senpai has a sacred gear. Kaneko tried to answer the unasked question, but she didn't sound sure herself either. It could be anything, a sacred gear, some secret power, he could even be a half-breed for all they knew. Well, quipped the queen, whatever it is, it certainly is making him powerful. Kaneko and even Rias cringed at how quickly her tone shifted, yet both didn't know why. Well, whatever it is, we should continue to keep an eye on him, she continued after the small thought train ended. We still have no idea if this power is even useful. Achoo. While the conversation was going on, our hero was diligently training along with a numerous amount of shadow clones. As it turns out, they also counted Yoard's EXP gains, so skill level ups weren't an issue for now. It did increase the strain on his mind, however, so he'd have to keep that in mind when using the technique. In other news, his level had increased from 1 to a solid 15, which was very easy since he found some spider-themed dungeon and cleared it. It was a bitch though, but he did gain some sweet loot, 300 yen, the wind style, wind claw and earth style, earth wall techniques and stat points, and a special token for clearing the dungeon. He'd also read the wind style, wind dragon technique, and its water variant. Wonder what that's for? He muttered to himself as he observed the token/coin. It had a round shape with a golden yellow middle and a deep blue edge with a weird symbol on it. Looked like a woman with long hair, and she was praying? Yup, she was praying. Wonder what he could get with that. Russell. What could cause that? Maybe someone had found him out and was planning to take him out. With that though, he grabbed one of his kunai and took a mix between a defensive and offensive stance while his eyes observed his surroundings and searching for this mysterious opponent. Cammy, fucking damn it, will you get your ass out? He mentally roared out, the silence killing him. Drops of sweat could be seen falling down his head as he with a semi-frantic mind tried to find whoever thought it was funny to prank him, and they were fucked afterwards. Russell. Slowly from within the foliage walked out a figure with a bigger figure leaning on it. By the smaller frame and curvaceous bodies to him it was obvious they were both girls. Their bodies were covered in scratch marks, shallow cuts still slowly leaking blood that was everywhere. Looks like they took quite the punishment, he mused to himself as he observed them with indifference, yet he couldn't help but feel sadness at their condition. As they were now, he had once been like that, alone, sadder than any child his age should have been. All because some assholes can't swallow their pride and belief to think maybe, just maybe they're wrong about someone. Whoa, okay, he did not mean to go that deep. Anyway, these girls needed help and he. Suddenly his throat went as dry as a dessert, and he did not mean the good kind. He could feel his heart bash against his chest as the taller of the two looked at him with those eyes, those same dead eyes he had once seen every day in the mirror. Please don't let them take me, she choked out. I can't do this any longer, please. Her cry of despair plus the droplets of tears made his heart clench, twist, and explode all in one. He definitely couldn't ignore it now. He had to help, and yes, this might be a trap, but he didn't give a shit when a poor girl was crying begging for help. And so when the monstrous beasts jumped out of the same bushes, with renewed determination he dashed, and, with some application of wind to his kunai, swiftly slashed before they could make any sound. On one side about half of them were dead, on the bad side however some weren't. And he didn't like that. But before he could act, he had to dodge several tails that were either snake, lion, or of different origin. Ugh, he hated these things already. They looked like they were born from an orgy of different animals. One had the body of a lion, the feet of some giant lizard, the tail of a snake, and the head of a horse of all things. Weird. Tilting his head, he watched as a darkish purple beam passed by with only a nick, and now annoyed at the beast he punched the air. The beast and subsequently his other observers looked confused before the thing let out what could be described as a mocking roar of laughter, yet its eyes widened and Naruto smirked as the beast had cuts of various depths appear all over its body. And then it split into chunks of different sizes and various bones and organs sticking out of them. Seeing this, its companions decided to flee before being mercilessly torn apart by the wind claw technique, much like their leader. So sorry about that, he spoke out of nowhere, but now that they're taken care of, how about we get you two ladies inside? Then we can see what the hell was that all about. He spoke as kindly as he could while he received stares of awe and shock, which from whom should be obvious. And so after quickly ushering them inside, he proceeded to make the only thing he knew would make their mood cheer up: ramen. And while he was in the kitchen, his two guests were chatting on the recent events that occurred. Well, Mio-sama, I can confidently say that we're lucky to have ran into that guy while running away from those beasts. Cheers the smaller girl while she addressed her charge. I do wonder how he could do that weird technique, as I sure haven't seen anyone else do it, she pouted as she tried to decipher their mysterious man. Said girl kept quiet as she thought about the blonde boy. Several whys and hows swam around her mind as she desperately tried to make sense of it all, and yet came up with nothing. Of course, she also hadn't noticed that she was also muttering all the while her companion looked at her in concert. Maybe her master had gone crazy? Both of their thoughts were interrupted when Naruto came back with 3 bowls of Ichiraku ramen, Naruto style. The smaller girl looked on in wonder as various flavors entered her nose. She could also smell the different spices used in the dish. It certainly made her hungry. Meanwhile, her charge looked on with a spark of confusion. It was just ramen, so what was so different? After a quick prayer and a mutter of itadakimasu, both girls took a bite out of the ramen bowl, and for a moment it was dead silent before both girls moaned in delight at the apparently amazing girls flushed in embarrassment as loud laughter forced its way out of Naruto's mouth, and the weird and, admittedly, hilarious reaction to his ramen which only seemed to further the girls' embarrassment. So I guess you'd probably want to know our names, huh? Awkwardly spoke the smaller girl, to which he just nodded. Well, I'm Maria Naruz, and this is my charge Mio Naruz, she cheerfully replied. Okay, and why the hell were those things attacking you? He questioned with a frown. His response was an exchange of stares between the two girls, debating if they should reveal the supernatural to this boy. Finally, after what seemed like hours, Maria relented. So with a sigh she began, well, you see, those are beings known as stay devils, and thereafter Mio-sama, for her blood stopping to see what he would say, she could only look at his eyes that shined with curiosity, and something she couldn't quite point out. By blood I mean that they are hunting her for his lineage. Since weaker devils hunt someone that has no experience, or isn't able to defend themselves, she finished with a frown at the thought of those disgusting beings. Her face slowly contorted into one of despair. Oh no. She cried out in horror, what are we gonna do about our cover? We're doomed. How will we hide from the devil? She wailed and wailed while trying to think of something, anything to use as a cover. On the sidelines, Maria looked at her friend with a blank stare, a sweat drop forming comically on her head as she could only sigh at the dramatics of it all. And so the next day came. Everyone did their morning routine, had breakfast, and Naruto and Maria were ready for school. Now Mio-sama, make sure you pay attention to class. Try flirting lots with Naruto-sama. At that one she gained 2 bumps on her head. Anyway, don't let privets peek on you too much, and try to make friends. She finished her sentence with a pleasing smile. Ha, okay Maria, and you try not to ruin Naruto-san's home, will you? She firmly stated to the girl who looked anywhere but at Mio and whistled innocently. He didn't know how much time he spent in dungeon after dungeon along with eating and sleeping on an infrequent basis, but his perks took care of that, so it was no issue to him. although if he had to guess it would probably be a week after he jokingly asked Rias out to dinner. Anyway, from all the grinding and killing he went from level 11 to level 15 with 16 following close. Maybe he could get it in this dungeon? He hoped so because he wouldn't want to be late to that date he has with Rias. He may be a lot of things, but rude and ungentlemanly was not a part of those things. Slashing at an orc and kicking a goblin away, he went straight to the door that led to the boss room. The dungeon was of a forest theme with enormously tall and dense trees and various goblins, elves, orcs and other wildlife coming to attack him. He even fought this one plant chick. He had to admit she was pretty hot. His outfit also changed too. Gone was his black and orange jumpsuit, and in was a blood-red jacket, unzipped to show off his awesome abs, black pants and belt with a silver buckle, a pair of dark red and a weird necklace he got from a demon enemy in a previous dungeon. He also got this badass sword too. Before he could continue boasting about how cool and badass he was, he leaned his body backwards to dodge an incoming slash that missed his by a few inches. Ha! Your aim sucks ugly. He grinned as he taunted the beast, which was a grotesque-looking ogre with a silver helmet with only a slit where the eyes should be. It was covered in various pieces of leather and iron armor, and had blades seemingly fused with its arms that he just dodged. Looking quite frustrated, the monster gave a ferocious roar while violently swinging its arms around and rushing towards him. Crouching low, he jumped barely before the beast reached him and slammed his new sword into its helmet, and a loud crack echoed through the forest. After landing safely, he slowly approached the fallen berserker, and then proceeded to poke it with his foot and sword. Weren't so tough, big guy. Guess I was just too good for you to handle. Minutes passed like grains of sand, and the beast still lay defeated. Now sure that it wasn't coming back up, he turned around and went towards the boss door. It was a giant wooden door covered by various vines and other plants, with the handle and lock being a black metal. Inserting and twisting the key, he opened the door with an echoing creak. The sight that greeted him was simply beautiful. A lush forest with tall trees and branches that held leaves of vibrant green. The trees' roots were big and strong from what he could see, so this place must have been taken care of with love and appreciation. He tensed in alert, however, when he noticed in a clearing a figure standing in the grass and sunlight. The figure was female, he noticed, with narrow hips and big but now ovaries so which were covered by leaves. Her legs were bare and slender, showing off her chocolate-colored skin, and her hair was long and curly green like the nature around her. He let out a high whistle in appreciation. This woman was a real beauty, and she knew how to show it. Hello, stranger, what calls you to my humble forest? Her tone was soft and gentle like the wind. The way her voice sounded made him relax and ease up. Nothing much, just enjoying the sights, killing anything that attacks me. The usual, he replied with a carefree tone while shrugging. The woman merely laughed as if amused. My oh my, you're an interesting young man, you know? Nature seems to love you. It calls for you as much as you it. It wants to be with you more than anyone I've seen, she told with a cheerful smile as if happy about something, but he didn't know what. I don't wish to fight you, young man, however you must prove to me yourself. Use the gift you have earned, she exclaimed out of nowhere as she twirled around a wooden staff and pointed it at him. He immediately raised his hands in a surrendering motion. He didn't want to fight this gorgeous lady either. Whoa now, let's calm down. No need for needles fighting. He tried to calm her down, but his words only made her grip her staff tighter. Alright lady, I'll play by your rules. His eyes morphed into toad ones as he rushed in for a punch which was blocked by her staff. He swung his leg in succession for a kick which landed and sent her flying into the grass. Dashing after her, he kneed her into her stomach and sent punch after punch to her stomach, face, and limbs before knocking her down to the ground. Landing on his feet, he began to walk towards her before in a blur she appeared before him and smacked the staff into his knee, shoulder, and stomach. She also tried to bash his head, but every attempt was dodged, although barely. He decided he should try some elemental damage and sent a trio of water dragons, which he had spent thousands of shadow clones to learn at her, which if by her wide eyes and gaping mouth she wasn't expecting. Rushing after the dragons struck her, he began punching her, and she suffered some damage before she recovered from his previous attack and blocked a good deal of his attacks. With a right hook his fist sailed towards her, she bent herself to the left so she would dodge. Wham! Before she was sent flying backwards by a left hook straight to her face and was promptly slammed into a tree, toppling it over before she continued by tumbling across the ground a couple of times and finally stopping. She slowly lifted herself up into a kneeling position. Slowly he took out his blade vengeance and calmly walked towards her. So you still want to continue, or are you ready to surrender? He advised the fallen lady, who managed looked at him with eyes that shined with pride. Slowly as she lifted herself up she yet again entered a stance as a green aura formed around her body. Seeing this, Naruto himself got ready and lifted his sword in preparation. It seems I must get serious if I wish to test you properly, she said seriously with hardened eyes as she leapt in a blur of speed, her staff prepared to strike. Before it could, however, he dodged at the last second. It struck the earth and plants came forth from the point of impact. In retaliation he swung his sword, but before it could hit it was blocked into a bind. How could it block without getting cut in half? Before he could continue his thinking he was hit by a bunch of vines twisted together which he sliced in half. She continued sending vines, branches and tree roots at him which he mostly defended against with only a couple of minor cuts here and there. Before she had time to recover he made a run towards her with his sword poised to strike while a thin layer of wind coated its blade. He swung to the left, and as she dodged he swung to the right before twirling around and swung down from top right, leaving a bleeding gash behind. Her hand immediately went up to cover the wood as it slowly stitched and mended itself back together, and in that time he came right in front of her, and with a strong hit sent her into the air before jumping after her. With the flat side of vengeance he hit her directly in the chest. That was returned with him getting hit in the shoulder. He then sent a punch to her stomach and followed up by smacking the flat of his blade into her face, or finally sending her crashing down into the ground with a hammer strike with his mana-powered fists. About halfway down he appeared beside her and kicked her again, sending her through several trees and covered her in leaves and branches. As she fell and slid down onto the ground, he managed to slow himself with wind chakra, although it felt as if his coils were lit on fire and then struck by Sasuke's Chidori. As he fell onto one knee he thought about increasing his training. Maybe he should practice with his sword more and try mastering his techniques like Senjutsu and the Kyuubi's power. As he dwelled in his thoughts, the mysterious lady began to regain her strength as she propped herself up onto her stick, which she used as a crutch. After minutes of her chest gasping and heaving for air, bouncing as she did so, she spoke, "Congratulations, my new summoner. You have passed my test." She looked at him with a warm smile, while he merely gave her a confused stare. "Summoner? Sorry, lady, but I can already summon toads," he replied while he looked at her with a tired gaze. "Toads? Ah, of course. You had to learn Sage Mode from somewhere. Well, no matter, for you will be able to summon me as an ally in battle, and outside of it as well. I am a lady after all," she giggled before added, "I will also help you further your training in Senjutsu as well, so do not become lax in your own exercise. Well, I must be going. See you soon, dear." With a wave of her hand and a smile she disappeared within a weird circle and a flash of bright light. That was weird even for him. Tense silence filled the forest. Was he forgetting something? What could it be? Did he forget his training? No, it couldn't be that. He already trained before the dungeon. School was covered by his shadow clone who returned half an hour ago, so what could it be? His eyes widened when he finally realized. Oh shit, I have dinner with Rias. With his shout he sent himself back to his empty house, quickly got into his shower, got out in record time and dashed to his bedroom and put on his outfit with shaking hands. He did not want to be late. After getting dressed he locked the door and began a mad sprint towards the restaurant. He told Rias where he would meet her. He hoped he would be on time. Wouldn't want to be like his sensei. At the restaurant, Rias had a very interesting time between talking to Naruto and now. She had gotten teased dead by Akino the rest of the day, went and killed some stray devil and then went back to her home, where she proceeded to think about Naruto and her date. She also had Kaneko keep an eye on ICI as she regarded him as a potential Peerage member along with Naruto. Also, weirdly enough, Kaneko was more silent than usual after spending time with Naruto at lunch break. She would come back with this sort of glow as she sat down and ate her sweets while absently swaying her legs. Weird. Also, now that she thought about it, she never thought she'd go 1-1. She wore a bulk dress with red highlights and a black purse that was either alligator or snake skin. Her hair was neatly tied in a bun with some bangs still framing her face, and to finish off she wore black heels. All in all, most men and women would drop unconscious after seeing her, especially with the way her dress pushed up her. Her fingers tapped the purse as she waited for Naruto to arrive, even if she herself came here a few minutes ago. Speaking of him, it always confused her how he arrived mere days after her brother trades her a piece and a mutated pawn for one of her own pawns. It looked like none of the standard chess pieces. Then add the fact Naruto comes to Ko not long after is making her very suspicious of her brother's actions, so she agreed to this dinner to get to know him, to understand him. And it certainly wasn't a date. Nope, they both agreed it wasn't. So anyway, while her peerage members kept watch over Issei, she would get to know Naruto and whatever power they felt him use when he fought against those two thugs and looted their stuff. On another note, she wondered what he did with that stuff. Hey Rias! After what definitely felt like hours, she heard the boy of her thoughts call out. Turning round to greet him, her mouth went dry and her heart seemed to get louder. He looked absolutely handsome. Wearing a regular black suit, pants and shoes while swiping out the white with dark orange made him look quite the piece of eye candy. And she didn't mind taking her piece at all. "So shall we?" he asked, unknowingly breaking her out of her thoughts. Seeing his arm out towards her own, she shook her head in agreement and looped her own around his. It felt nice to have someone do this. Walking inside, she could see other people dining and conversing with each other while a couple looked their way before turning back to their own thing. Naruto, who was leading them to their table, looked at her and gave her a reassuring smile, which she returned in full grace. Finally arriving, he went forward and pulled out a chair for her. "Madam," he replied in a faux butleresque tone, to which she gave a mock frown and pouted before giggling and smiling herself. After taking a seat, a waitress has appeared to take their order and tried to flirt with her not date, who simply smiled at the woman who he thought was complimenting him, all the while being dense about her true nature. It was kind of cute in her opinion, with the way his eyes squinted as his smile struck, giving him this look almost like that of a fox. She even let out a ladylike giggle. "So Naruto, why are you so out of breath? Were you in the middle of something?" she asked with curious eyes, as she obviously saw his labored breath on the way to here. He looked slightly surprised. He didn't think she would notice. "Oh, that? I was just finished with my training," he replied so smoothly that she thought he was asked this question so regularly that it became an instinctive response. However, she also had to ask more. "Training? What kind of training are you doing?" She puzzled forward, trying to know why her brother, who had given her a very weird-looking evil piece about a year ago and a day later Naruto shoves up. It piqued her interest since it was Grafia herself that delivered the paperwork needed. Putting such thoughts aside, she focused back on Naruto, who either didn't notice or didn't care, and continued his speech. "Oh, simple weightlifting, jogging, stretching. I just use way heavier weights than usual," and by weights he meant using seals that increased the gravitational pressure on his body by about 10 times. On each limb. "Oh, really? And how much time do you usually spend time doing everything?" She was really curious, as his records made it seem he was about average. Were they wrong, or was Naruto simply not trying? Scratching the back of his neck, he looked confused as he took a few moments to ask her. "About 5 to 6 hours, I think." "I don't really keep track of time," he answered, but was unsure himself, as the time in a dungeon was, by his understanding, either different, slowed to a point where it seemed frozen, or was frozen when he was in there, but he wouldn't know, as that was just his theory. The knowledge about it was beyond him. As they continued their conversation, the waitress returned with their food and the bill, which suspiciously held a phone number at the back. She could feel her eyes narrow. Why were they doing so? Was she jealous? Why would she be jealous of her not date possibly spending time with that woman? It couldn't be that. It was impossible. "So Naruto, what do you do besides train? Do you have any hobbies?" she continued asking. She really wanted and needed to know more about him if she wanted to understand the weird power he showed that day. She also hoped Sona didn't have her eyes on him. He adopted a thoughtful look as he narrowed his eyes. "Well, I do like to play pranks. One time I even managed to prank an entire clan back at my home village. They had dyed hair and itchy cleats for a month." He let out a joyful laugh as he reminisced on his time back in Konoha. "I wasn't a very well-educated or well-mannered kid either. Being an orphan does that to people." His face grew solemn as he talked about some of his darker days. During their conversation, she had either ignored or simply didn't notice a piece stake on her left cheek. However, he did. So leaning forward, he reached his hand out to grab it. Rias immediately focused on the fact that he was inching closer towards her. "What does he want? Is it a kiss? Or maybe my hair is wrong? Did I forget something?" As he threw fell depair into chaos, his hand finally reached the piece of meat and plucked it off of her face. Finally noticing the stray bit of food, she simply let out an eye in realization, then her face burst into a colorful shade of scarlet as Naruto proceeded to throw the piece of steak into his mouth. "It's like an indirect kiss." Obviously her throughs weren't helping, as her mind showed images of them kissing, holding hands, and other things couples usually did. It just made her face burn brighter. After the goofy yet fun dinner, they walked around the city for an hour or so, all the while they made stops along the way. The first was an ice cream shop, which she asked Naruto to buy her some. After going inside, he had returned with strawberry ice cream for herself and orange for him. When she asked why, he gave her an odd look before answering. "Because orange is the best color, so orange ice cream is also the best." While weird, it did make her smile, something that he returned with an even brighter smile of his own. After that, they went around aimlessly as she continued to ask him questions about his home village, which she learned was named Konoha. She also learned about his friends, more of his pranks, and even the people he considered most precious. His Gigi, who was apparently the leader and a sort of grandfather to him, Iruka, who was a teacher and brother figure to Naruto, and Finley, the ramen chef Tucci, and his daughter Ayam, who gave him free ramen when couldn't pay for it himself. Knowing how kind he was made her smile for some reason. Continuing their walk, they went to an arcade after Rias mentioned it had games and prizes, which Naruto found exciting. Inside the Iraq itself was a multitude of machines and games, from claw machines to basketball games and even some well-typed ones. Looking around, Rias finally spotted a giant nine-tailed fox toy, and her eyes gained a very big twinkle as she turned towards Naruto, with her eyes suddenly being twice the size and her lip poking out slightly. This was the dreaded puppy dog Ijutsu. His eyes steeled themselves as he forced his face to stay neutral, but Rias kept getting cuter and cuter, until he finally folded like wet paper and went towards the stall with the fox. Immediately he slammed down some money which he got from his dungeon looting, thanked the log for his new power, and grabs the toy gun of some sort as he took aim and placed his finger above the trigger. 3 shots later he missed. "Heh, looks like your aim sucks, kid," said the owner with a smile as he thought about how he rigged the gun to always shoot just slightly away from the targets. "Hell no, I'm not going up until I get that fox." Yelling with a burst of determination, he slammed down more money, took the gun, and with a steady breath he took aim and shot once more, hitting 2 out of 5 targets. This caused him to slump down in sadness as he drew circles with his finger. Rias looked, seemingly amused by Naruto's silly behavior, and covered her mouth with her hand to try and suppress her giggles. Hearing her not-so-hidden giggles, he lifted his head up and gave her as much of a glare as he could, although it didn't seem to work as her giggles seemed to slowly shift into muffled laughter. He couldn't stop focusing his eyes on her as he observed everything about her, the way her eyes shined and brimmed with joy, how her long crimson hair swayed in the gentle winds, and how bright her smile was. For reasons he couldn't quite know, he began to smile himself, not one of those forced grins he showed to everyone in Konoha, but a real heartwarming smile only his precious people would see. As she slowly came down from her joyous laughter, she noticed his smile, and how different it felt to his usual grins he showed to everyone at school. Something he didn't show anyone but her. It made her feel warm somehow, like she found some hidden treasure. "Well, Rias, since you seem to be enjoying yourself, would you like a try?" Naruto brought her back to reality as he offered her the toy gun. Looking at him, she replied, "How about a bet?" She gave him a gentle smile as she spoke. In response, he raised a brow, to which she continued, "If I manage 10 shots without missing, you're taking me out to dinner again sometime next week," she finished before she gave him a challenging gaze, eyes burning with determination. Feeling pumped himself, he dug into his pocket and slammed down some more money. "You heard the lady, old man. More shots!" he yelled enthusiastically. Rias sent him an amused smile, and he smiled back. "I gotta warn you, Rias, I haven't lost a bet till today, and I'm not breaking that streak now." He gave an enthusiastic speech about his devilish luck and how badass and awesome he was. She couldn't help but laugh at his silly antics. Beside her, Naruto was still going on and on about his awesomeness and the many villains he defeated, which weren't that many really, before he stopped when a melody like no other entered his ears. He actually froze when he heard this sound, and slowly his head turned to the girl next to him. Yet again his eyes couldn't help but notice every beautiful thing about her. He absently wondered why that was, how everything about her captivated him. Her hair, her eyes, her mannerisms, her kind and gentle aura, her heartwarming smile, that oh-so-sweet laugh. He was staring so much at her that he didn't notice she stopped laughing or the fact that she got close to him. "Her Naruto? Naruto hiai?" she called out to him as she vawed her hand in front of his face, while her own settled into a mixture of a frown and a pout. Finally coming back from his imagination, he quickly realized the very close proximity of their faces and lips. He could see their plumpness and rich glossy pink color, and her face angular yet soft and feminine, which was also covered by her red bangs. It made him flick back and erupt in a blush so crimson apples would be jealous of. "You said something?" he replied after recollecting himself, all the while trying not to stutter. He could feel his lips become dry and his throat seemed to feel tighter than normal. His heart was beating so fast it might jump out of his chest. What was this feeling? Could it be? No, that's impossible. What girl would love someone like him? Rias looked on confused as she watched his face flush so scarlet her family would be envious. Then she watched as his face flashed into different emotions, from embarrassment to confusion, and finally sadness, before it all disappeared. What was that? What happened to you, Uzumaki Naruto? Filing away her thoughts for later, she focused back on the boy in front of her. "I called you because you were obviously focused somewhere else," she complained as she pouted yet again, this time placing her hands on her hips. Their day continued on with their dinner, or was it a date, considering the dinner they had was long over? Whatever they were doing, they had fun. Currently they were walking through the town, both of them with cotton candy in hand. "So you mentioned having friends back home. What were they like?" asked Rias as she continued to tear off bits of cotton from her stick. "Well, we all went to the same school together. Most were family heirs, although they weren't all that serious about it when we were younger, but they got trained by their parents and other members. 2 of them were kinda arrogant and stuck up, but I got one of them to change by kicking their ass." he proclaimed with a bold grin as he remembered the Chunin exams. One of my friends was kinda crazy since his dad was always pushing him to be better, training him with weapons and such. Before we met he was undistinguishable from a cold killer, then he challenged me to a fight and punches were thrown, both of us bled but in the end I managed to last long enough to land a good hit on him and win. After that we talked about each other, and kinda became best friends. Glancing back at her he was stunned to see her eyes focused on himself, her cotton candy almost forgotten as she passionately listened to his story. Realizing he stopped talking her eyes focused back as she looked at him with confusion. Why did you stop? I wanna hear the rest, she whined much like a princess who did get what she wanted. Well, after that one of my classmates decided it was better for him to go join this notorious mob boss so he could train and avenge his family that was killed by his older brother. Obviously I tried to stop him, but he ate an ass and decided I didn't want him to complete his goal, so we fought. We punched, kicked, stabbed and did anything we could to get an upper hand over the other. However, finally he managed to win by knocking me out with a punch to the chest and managed to escape. Later on, after I trained with my godfather, I met him a few times. We fought again, but he's still rouge. While that was going on, a former student named Nagato who formed this assassination group was fighting with my godfather with 5 other people and killed him. Later on he then went and tried to kill me, but after lots of fighting I defeated him. Then I decided I should move away, get a fresh start, and so now I'm here, he finished, smiling at her. Meanwhile Rias looked on silently as her mind tried to comprehend what it just learned. She knew Naruto was strong, but she never thought about something like this. That still didn't explain the fact that his parents never showed up, although she would leave that question for later. Why are you okay? She looked at him with pleading eyes as if she knew he'd lied to her. Giving out a sigh, he looked at her and said, do you want the truth or the lie? She responded with a firm yes, so he continued, I am not okay. I still get nightmares from time to time. Sometimes I can still see him laying there dead. As he softly spoke, his eyes dimmed, their color lessened as they seemed to stare off into nothingness. She looked at him shyly and mumbled out, do you want a hug? All the while rubbing one of her arms as she looked away from him. Naruto, however, looked equally surprised as he was shocked but smiled nonetheless. Yeah, I'd like that. Faster than he could realize, she mashed against his chest as her long, slender arms wrapped around him, letting their warmth and close proximity comfort each other with back rubs here and a pat there. Everything else around them ceased to exist as they basked in each other's presence, with one scent invading the other's nose. Naruto smelled a mix of ramen, nature and slightly ocean. Weird, but she liked it. It was like Naruto himself, unpredictable and always different. Naruto, however, could smell the scent of honey, strawberries, cherries and other fruit with what seemed like rose shampoo. It felt sophisticated and elegant, yet caring and warm at the same time. It reflected Rias perfectly. While they were hewing it out, many people, both married and unmarried, looked on with smiles and hushed whispers. They also awed at how adorable the two looked together before they went on their way. After their very intimate moment, they decided to call it a day and returned back to the ORC clubroom. When asked why, Rias replied that she had some leftover paperwork to finish and moped as she did so, while Naruto walked by her awkwardly, not knowing whether he should comfort her or not. Ultimately, he decided to hug her, as a accord it was. So after helping Rias come out of her sadness, they were on their way back to Ko Academy. Either of them spoke as a pleasant silence settled around them. They passed many closed shops and ones that were in the process of closing down for the night. People were far and few in between as light from both the moon illuminated the road ahead. Slowly the silence turned from comfortable to tense, as both teens sensed some fear of danger around them. Abrupt stopping in the middle of a park, Naruto stood in front of Rias protectively as he yelled out, "Alright douchebags, come out, we know you're here." His words seemed to have a reaction as multiple people stepped out from behind the trees and bushes, with most of them wearing a dark blue suit and pants, white shirt underneath and black shoes, along with either a watch or some type of glasses. Only 2 stood out, one guy that had a white suit, golden shirt, white pants with golden trims and plain white shoes along with a golden wristwatch, probably a Rolex or something. The other dude wore an all-black suit, pants and shoes and a black top hat. "Good evening, young man, miss. My name is Fujin and this is Kung Lao, and we are here to retrieve a certain object that was stolen from one of our members," smoothly spoke the white-dressed man, now known as Fujin, while Lao stood silently, merely observing the pair of teenagers. "Well, Fujin, I'd love to know what this object you Teo are looking for is," cheekily quipped the blonde as he played dumb. Rias herself looked confused as she didn't know about any object. Smiling calmly, he replied, "One of our rings were stolen, and the thief was reported to be a blonde male with blonde hair, blue eyes and whisker-like scars on his cheeks. Oddly enough, you happen to match his description. Perhaps this is a coincidence?" He finished before he stared at Naruto, unnerving him in the process with his chilling gaze. "Well, you caught me. Yup, it's me. Now I'd love to return the thing, but it's in my other pants, so we can do this the easy way and you let me go, or we do this the hard way and I kick both of your asses, he cockily replied as he gave the two Yakuza members an arrogant grin, or what they thought was one. Rias looked even more confused. Why was he doing this? Was it to protect her? Protect her somehow, she didn't mind that. Releasing out a sigh, the man spoke again. Very well, it seems we must fight for the ring. Do you wish for a one-on-one match? He stated as he unsheathed a short sword from behind his back and entered an offensive stance. Naruto said nothing as he pulled out a kunai, already coated in a layer of wind chakra, and entered his own stance. Moments passed and the Teo opponents did nothing besides stand there, and then as if by divine intervention a single leaf fell down and the two rushed at each other, striking and deflecting each other's blade. Multiple clangs rang aloud as they tried to outsmart or overpower their opponent before they ended up in a bind of blades, staring at each other's eyes. Pushing forward, both men tried to gain the upper hand but with no success. Begor Naruto also sent a kick that Fujin barely blocked with his own leg. Disengaging, they both jumped away before unexpectedly Naruto charged forward as he brought out another kunai and began slashing and cutting away at the Yakuza and achieved some minor cuts before he was kicked away into a tree. While this was going on, Rias tried to rush in to help Naruto, but was stopped by Kung Lao, who gave her a negative nod. She looked from him back to the battle before she sighed and returned back to the sidelines. Although she wished she could help, it was her responsibility to defend herself from attackers, not someone else's. Naruto, who got up, decided to throw down several smoke bombs around the area and quietly and swiftly went behind Fujin and struck. Or he would have if the man didn't turn around and block his strikes with his blade. Both then tried to kick the other away with no success before Fujin quickly dashed away, but not before leaving Naruto with a slash on his arm. His healing would have kicked in if he didn't manually suppress it. Wouldn't want everyone to know he had superpowers, but still gripping his blades he leapt forward and yet again went for the attack. But this time as their blades collided he swept under his legs and pressed a kunai against his throat and heart. As his chest heaved for air he spoke, "You surrender? 'Cause I can still continue if you want to," he asked the man, who simply accepted defeat and stood up. "You have won fairly, so I shall return back to my superior. Although do expect our return." Bowing slightly, he and his men disappeared back into the trees under the cover of darkness. Pocketing away his kunai, he turned towards Rias before his vision was engulfed in red as the familiar feeling of her arms wrapped around him. He also felt her very gifted chest but chose not to focus on that. "You idiot, what was that about? You could have gotten yourself hurt," she cried as she began to breathe heavily. "Hey, you saved that nothing happened." He looked at his arm before he continued, "Well, almost nothing. I should probably get that bandaged." "Wait a minute, I may have some spare bandages with me." As she rummaged through her purse she did pull out a roll of gauze watch she began wrapping around his injured arm and also scolding him for being so reckless and stupid. All the while he simply smiled at her. Now that his arm was all patched up he went his way since the school was nearby, or so he thought as Rias gabbed onto his uninjured arm and walked alongside him. Looking at her with a raised eyebrow he asked confused, "Where are you going?" To which she looked at him with a dry stare. "I know you'll probably ignore this and train or something, so I'm coming along with you to make sure you don't do that," she replied hotly as she continued to walk while he shrugged with one arm and winced. Finally arriving home he took off his shoes, Rias did as well, then they both went into separate rooms and changed, put their clothes away and went into different beds. Or at least he did. Rias climbed into his bed and when he asked why she stated, "So you don't escape." All the while they didn't notice a pair of eyes watching them. After the events of yesterday his body had been left exhausted from all the fighting plus the chakra drain he used for coating his blade in wind chakra, which further enhanced his exhaustion and need for sleep. He had also thought he would see Rias next to him, seeing as she also went to sleep right next to him, or at least somewhere in the house. But nope, she just seemed to vanish into thin air, possibly returning back to her house wherever it was. With a loud yawn and great amounts of stretching his arms and back, which flexed his developed muscles into almost a sculpture's K position, he got up. He was also pretty sure if any of the girls from school were to take a peek, they would be blown back with a flow of blood from how chiseled his body looked. Now it wasn't anything like those bodybuilders here in this world, but more like an athlete, lean, compact and firm with great shape. And with that he also got out of the bathroom. Now done with his morning routine he went head on to his kitchen. Along the way he thought about those two girls he saved a few days ago from those monsters. Learned their names were Mio and Maria Neruz, with Maria being Neo's guardian after her human parents died, which meant she may have both or one parent being some sort of supernatural creature, but Maria said they were hunted by devils, so logically it had to be a devil, right? Walking into the kitchen he was caught by a stray loud yawn, and when he reopened his eyes he was greeted by one of the occupants of his residence. It was Maria. If her small, lithe form wasn't already a clue, although something was odd about her. It took him a few minutes, but when it clicked he realized she wasn't wearing anything but a simple white apron. His mind promptly shut down, and he stood there with blank eyes. While he was coming to his senses, he would swear he saw Christopher walking in front of him. Turns out it was just Maria looking down at him with confused and concerned eyes. "Morning, Naruto-sama, although I have to ask, why did you suddenly fall down like that?" she questioned as she tilted her head to try and understand his logic. "Don't mind that, better question is why are you wearing that apron?" he responded, clearly embarrassed. The young-looking girl blinked once, twice, then again. "How is it bad? I thought boys liked this sort of thing." She was becoming so confused her eyes were spinning in spirals. "No, it's not wrong. What is wrong, however, is the fact that you have nothing underneath it," Naruto responded, still slightly flushed as he tried to not look in her direction. Oh, maybe she should have thought about that. But before said conversation could continue, a still drowsy and sleepy Mio walked in, slouched posture and all. "Morning, Sleeping Beauty, how was your nap?" he stated while he smiled amusingly. "Morning, Naruto-san, Mio." Before she could finish her sentence, she erupted into a loud yawn. "Sorry about that. As I was saying, I had a nice sleep before the nightmares returned." At that point, the girl looked down with those dull eyes as her lips formed into a line. Thinking quickly, Naruto's expression brightened as he gave the girl a big smile. "Well, how about I make us some breakfast?" Which Maria here should have done already, he finished as he sent the smaller girl a mean glare, who in response looked away as she blushed. Mio seemed to lighten up slightly as she looked at the boy who saved her. "You can cook?" She was confused and also accusing, as from what she'd seen, Naruto could only make ramen, and it wasn't even homemade, even when he had the know-how to do so. She suddenly grew annoyed at the blonde as her eyes narrowed and lips became a pout in an attempt to look menacing, which would have worked if she wasn't so adorable. "Kaya!" The girl let out a startling yell as she was picked up by the blonde, who could only rub his cheek against hers and mumble kawaii. She blinked a few times, brain still in shock as it processed this new information, before her entire face erupted in a furious blush as she tried to free herself from the blonde menace's iron hold. What are you doing? Let me go, you dummy!" she yelled in a very Tsundere-like fashion as she continued to uselessly smack her tiny fists against the blonde's very developed back. Her every hit let her brain know how every inch, every muscle felt as it contracted and relaxed, how firm every area was, and especially how hard his muscles were. It made her face turn a couple shades darker at the image of a suddenly naked Naruto. While the embarrassed Mio was battling her own mind, Naruto and Maria were having very different responses. Maria was covering her mouth with both of her hands, cheeks blooded and eyes teary as she tried to contain her laughter, while her legs barely managed to stand still with all the shaking they were doing. Ultimately she failed and went into howls of laughter. Naruto, however, had a very different reaction. His eyes glowed with happiness, his mouth a gentle yet happy, truly happy smile as the redhead struck his back time and time again. It made his mind at ease knowing she wasn't as bad as he thought he was. Now only if he could get her to talk more. After breakfast, and with Mio and Naruto having already dressed for school, they stood in front of the door while Maria looked on confused. "And why can't I go with?" she questioned in a whiny fashion as she folded her arms across her almost non-existent chest. "Because you look way too young for a high school, so you're staying here. Now if you need anything, get my wallet and go to the store nearby. Don't go into my room and don't make a mess," he sternly told her as he opened the door. "We're going." Oh, before he could say his goodbye, he was greeted with the face of someone very familiar, the same someone who had escaped his residence. "Ohio," Naruto replied, said escapist who tried to appear as innocent as possible even though her smile was clearly fake to all three people watching. "Rias, where did you go, and how did you escape while also not wake me up?" Naruto immediately asked her. Rias tensed, her mind scrambling to try and give an appropriate answer while also not reveal anything about her true nature. Her eyes blinked and looked to and fro many times as she fidgeted with her palms and hair. "Well?" he continued his questioning as his brow lifted in response. "You want to tell me?" Or he left the last part unsaid. Well, you see, when all hope seemed lost, an idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. "I had woken up early today, and I did think to wake you up, but you see, you looked so peaceful while you slept, and very cute, if I might add. Then I checked my phone for any messages and found that my vice president had asked me to come by and sort out some new books that had arrived, so I tried to get out of bed. However, you were holding me in a very tight grip, so with all I got I tried a few times to pry myself away, but you proved stronger, so I had to try again." As she recalled her tale, her small audience of three had different responses. Mio had glared at Naruto with folded arms and a tapping foot. Maria had a recorder. Where did she pull that out? And was recording her story. Naruto himself looked pretty surprised, and was that a blush she spied? She almost giggled. She almost giggled, because she was a lady and ladies didn't chuckle. They laughed, but they didn't chuckle. Not at all. So when I managed to free myself from your monstrous grip, I quickly put on my clothes as Ahe tried to continue her totally real story. She was cut off by a scream from Mio. What? You two were naked? She shouted with wide eyes, her face getting redder and redder by the second. Now it was Naruto's turn to look frightened as the smaller redhead glared at him, waiting for an explanation. However, he was saved from further panic as Rias continued to talk. No, we weren't naked. Well, I was, but he wasn't. Anyway, I made a mad dash back to the school and got a good distance before I got exhausted, and then I came upon this old lady who had just gotten robbed, so I had to help her. It took us an hour or so of searching, but we found the thieves who, upon being discovered, tried to attack us, and seeing as I knew some basic self-defense, I defeated them. After that, I finally barely arrived, so I had to take a shower from all the running, and then it took me another hour and a half to sort and store all the books accordingly. She finished with a bright smile and closed eyes. Naruto was befuddled, and some might say that was because her story sounds ridiculous, and it was. But it eerily reminded him of his sensei. At the thought of Kakashi-sensei, his mind decided to dig up those last moments he tried so hard to bury, his wide concerned eyes, how his pleading voice could be heard in his sleep. It made Naruto shudder as he glanced to the floor with images of his friends all together and smiling, memories of former enemies like Zabuza and Nagato, who was still a sore subject for him. Then came Ayam Nichin and Old Man Tuchi, Old Man Kage, Granny Tsunade Jiraiya. 2. HM? Nah. What was that? Ruti, someone was calling for him? Naruto. He saw brought back as Mio slammed her palm against his back with a shout of his name. So glancing towards her, he responded in a relatively dully and somehow uninterested tone. HM? You said something, Mio? Said girl didn't know why, but she could feel her eyes burn, figuratively, as her teeth clenched and fists shook. Curse you, Nichan. Meanwhile, Kakashi Icho was standing in front of the memorial stone, speaking with his sensei, and his wife suddenly found the urge to cry and looked towards the cloud-free sky. I don't know why, but I feel as if Naruto suddenly made me proud, the silver-haired ninja monologued as twin streams of tears fieled down his masked face. On the other side of the village, Lee shouted about youth and surpassing Naruto. Silence. It was engulfing the hallway of his apartment, as everyone stood like some sort of statue. Mio was wide-eyed at the fact that something like that escaped her mouth. Maria was torn between laughing and confusion. Rias, on the other hand, looked intrigued at the tale apparently being siblings, as such a thing wasn't listed on his papers. Naruto himself looked just as surprised and shocked before he quickly snapped back, well, Mio, if you thought of me like that, you should have said so. I'd be glad to be your brother. Wide grin pointed at said girl. He mentally pat himself on the back for his quick thinking, although he did notice a window pop up in the corner of his eye, but it was ignored for the moment. So they're not actually siblings. Rias felt internally relieved yet also alert. Why did she feel so on guard around Mio? Well, since you're also here, you could go with us to school, he stated as he glanced towards the now unfocused Buster redhead, who blinked and looked towards him. HM? Oh, yet I'd love to go along with you. Even when distracted, she was still the lady her mother taught her to be. Mio smiled, although it was not the usual happy one. This one didn't look all natural and was less bright than it was supposed to. All in all, somehow it would make certain people look in terror at the girl's expression. But she suppressed this weird feeling and silently walked alongside Naruto, although she didn't dare look into his eyes. As the trio walked, they encountered Kaneko. Oh, hey Kaneko-chan. Naruto was the first to greet the first-year as he smiled brightly and waved wildly to the girl. The first-year student greeted him with her usual monotone voice and dull expression. Hello, senpai. A girl she was, but a girl of many words she wasn't. Not bothered by her behavior, he still smiled widely. How are you? Did ya sleep well? Inquired the blonde as he placed his hand on her head and began to give her head pets, which elicited a soft, unheard purr from the white-haired girl. Unheard by most who were not Naruto, who simply smiled, although it was a smaller one. It was a smile nonetheless. Kaneko, who almost closed her eyes, had to snap the open from closing. She could feel the aura, the chakra he held, and it was warm, embracing, comforting. It felt like an endless ocean that would drown her entire being, and yet she wasn't afraid as Ahe thought she would be after the first time she sensed his chakra. As the blonde and his cute Kohai conversed about many topics while Naruto did the talking, Kaneko just gave nods and hums of either agreement or disagreement. Mio and Rias weirdly both sent the lowly girl scathing, soul-ripping, gut-wrenching glares. Era, so this is who you spent the night with, Bucho? Came the seductive voice beside them. And it was one voice Rias knew very well. Because there stood Akino Himejima in the usual female school outfit, her violet eyes brimming with tease and lust. Akino, why are you here and not at the club room? Rias tried poorly to change the subject, and Akino felt that she could humor her king today. Well, Bucho, I felt like I'd walk along with you to school. Now imagine my surprise when I see you walking with Uzumaki Naruto, a mystery girl, and our dear little Kaneko-chan, replied the brunette with her kind smile. The rest of their walk was uneventful. Hug. He was bored. So bored he might play a prank just to relieve the boredom. Maybe he should annoy someone, but who? There's Yuki, but that wouldn't be any fun. Issei, I can prank him when he purrs with his buddies, so not right now. Well, there is Tsubaki, but I'd rather prank the student council as a whole. Well, guess I'll have to bother Yuki. When he turned around, he could find said girl staring at him, as if she knew what he was going to do. Hey Yuki, wanna go ditch class with me? Naruto whispered, hoping the girl would agree to his shenanigans. I'm class president, so me ditching class would be very unwise, but I'd do it for a favor, that is, after some thinking, Yuki replied back. Was he being used? He thinks he's being used. Sigh. Okay, what's the favor? With a sigh, he agreed to whatever thing she was going to do to him. Great, we'll ditch the next class as this one is about to end, so you and I are going to study, even though we could do that here, Yuki replied, then added the last part with a sweat drop as she realized that they didn't really need to ditch class for that, but were doing so anyway. So what are we doing again? He asked, as he had no idea on what they were supposed to do. He was sitting on Yuki's bed as he didn't want her to know about his guests. Yuki herself appeared to be searching for something as she rummaged through many drawers, shelves, and even her closet as she spoke. Well, I mean you, will be studying for upcoming tests and other areas you clearly lack, she finished as she stepped out with a stack of books that covered her head. Oh wait, what? He took a moment to realize exactly what she said. His eyes widened to the size of dinner plates, as he thought how much he would be forced to study, but really he was cramming instead of studying, which would be easier if he could use shadow clones. Yuki came back holding a stack of books going past her head, making it so he couldn't see her cute face. Cute? Where did that come from? Weird. Well, here's everything you'll need to know for the next test, she smugly stated as she looked at his confused and worried gaze. I'll have to read all of this, he yelled out, finally unable to hold in his shock as he whimpered sadly. Yuki, feeling sad for the blonde, gave him comforting pats on the head. There, I'll be here to help you, she cheerfully exclaimed. To her surprise, the blonde then began to cry at her attempt to encourage him. Together, Yuki and Naruto had spent most of the time studying, with a few breaks in between to let the blonde properly process all the information. Yuki did have to repeat a few lessons simply because the blonde delinquent's mind didn't have the easiest time at grasping the knowledge on the subject. Well, this seems good. Bye, Naruto-san. I hope we can have lessons like this more often, although let's not skip class next time, or school. Yuki said her goodbye, then added the last part just as she remembered it. Naruto felt a cold shiver go down his spine. He really wasn't enjoying those lessons, and it wasn't because Yuki was a bad teacher or anything, it was just that his mind was more focused on doing to learn than reading to learn, which was something his senseis realized really soon. On his way back, he thought about the stats he saw of everyone today and what they're all about. So it went like this. Your attributes are split into 3 categories: physical, mental, and special. Physical attributes deal with the strength and speed of your body. They are strength, STR, dexterity, DX, speed, SPD, and stamina, STA. STR is the raw physical strength of your body. This determines how great attacks are, as well as the base damage you deal out in combat. Def is the strength your body has to resist elemental or physical attacks. It is the first to take the hit before your HP does. DX represents how nimble and agile you are, determining your accuracy as well as attack speed and attack evasion. SPD is how fast you are overall. This determines your movement speed. This stat receives a buff if your STR and DX are at the same level. STA represents how sturdy you are, determining a great deal of your hit points, resistances to various status effects, and fatigue. The mental attributes represent your mental prowess. They are intelligence, INT, and wisdom, WIS. INT represents your ability to learn and reason, especially in problem solving. It determines how effective your offensive and defensive skills are. Determines your memorization ability and a good amount of chakra you have at your disposal. WIS is your common sense, basically. It determines your CP regeneration rate, your ability to read other people's emotions and body language, as well as resistance against mental attacks, pain, and torture. Determines your problem-solving ability. Special attributes are unaffected by your mind or body. They are generally of things that affect you without you being able to affect them, other than raising their attribute points. The only special stat you have access to at this time is Luck, LUK. LUK is a mysterious thing. It affects a multitude of things: random encounters, monster drops, and critical hits, among other things. Well, that was the gist of it, and it's all the same for everyone except for the part about luck. Now on to his friend's stats. First was Rias. Origin: demonic. Titles: red-haired princess, crimson-haired ruined princess, princess of Gremory. Class: high-class devil. HP: 4,900. MP: 1,000. STR: 15. Def: 11. SPD: 13. Int: 39. Dex: 26. Luke: 18. Perks: Gremory heiress. Being the heir to a well-known family is great. It's even greater when you have the power of destruction, although you still have responsibilities. Increased magic resistance by 50%. For every second your attack is connected with an enemy, it may damage their magic reserve. XP gained to all demonic spells increased by 40%. High-class devil. Being a denizen of the underworld has its benefits, like hog levels of magic receives and great physical strength, although it's not without its weakness, such as holy magic. Skills: Gremory Magic LVE Max. As a Gremory, you can manipulate magic in almost any way you can imagine, although it will take greater effort to do so. Increased XP gain for all demonic spells by 80%. Decreased cost for all demonic spells by 80%. For every 10 LV and 5 spells, gain 2 additional attribute points. Power of Destruction LVE Max. Cost of all demonic spells decreased by 60%. Damage and speed of pod spells increased. For every second your attack is connected with an enemy, it may inflict burned within status effect. Chance of pod inflicting destroyed status: 100. Magic resistance increased by 30%. He let out a whistle at the thought of all those buffs and effects. Rias was pretty strong in his opinion. Another thing was the fact that Rias was apparently a devil. Who would have thought that the nicest girl in school was a devil? Kaneko was next, and she had some interesting stats. Origin: Yukai. Title: Gremory's Rook. Class: Nekashu. HP: 1990. CP: 1000. STR: 50. Def: 50. SPD: 10. Int: 16. Dex: 34. Luke: 15. Perks: Nekashi Yukai. Apparently, being a member of a species of cats isn't that bad, even if you're half devil. You gain access to Yujitsu, which is your version of magic, and Senjutsu, also known as Nature Chakra and Tuki, although you're afraid to use it. All chakra-type spells gain damage increased by 60%. Chakra spells cost decreased by 20%. Chakra attacks have a chance to inflict chakra burn status effect. Reincarnated Devil. Being brought back as a devil isn't so bad after all. You gain all the strengths and weaknesses of a devil, and you also get to keep your previous stats. Pretty neat. All spells XP increased by 15%. All spells damage increased by 10%. All attributes boosted by 10. Woman of Steel. You've trained your body so much that your skin is as thick as steel. With this perk you can ignore small projectiles, block weapons such as swords, and negate 20 to 50% of damage. Talk about unbreakable. Rook. Due to being reincarnated as a devil and part of a peerage, you gain 20 STR and Def every 10 LV, although your speed is greatly reduced. Skills: Yujitsu Manipulation. You're able to cast illusions and other attacks like Elemental. Cost of all chakra spells reduced by 20%. Damage of all chakra spells increased by 20%. Gain 15% more XP when using chakra spells. Gain 3 extra attribute points per 10 LV. So she could learn Senjutsu? He'd have to remember this for the foreseeable future, and learn why she was afraid of it. Akino was pretty much the same as Kaneko. Instead of being a Yukai, she was a fallen angel, and so gained some pretty neat stuff like light immunity, increase in light spell damage, and all that stuff. They were also a part of something called a Peerage, which was modeled after a game called chess and was the reason for their ridiculous increase in certain attributes like strength or speed. He tried to use Observe on Yuki, but it just said error user level too low or something like that, and well, moving on. He went to the menu and found his own skills tab, which looked something like this. Origin Gamer. Title not applicable. Class Ninja. HP 20,000. CP 15900. MP 19,000. STR 30. Def 30. SPD 42. Int 19. Dex 36. Luke. Perks. Uzumaki Heritage. You're a member of the Uzumaki. With this perk you gain a 200% increase for your CP, MP and HP, and you have regeneration, the ability to use and master seals and create chains. Jinchuriki. Due to being a holder of the QB, you gain a 600% increase for your CP, MP and HP. Your regeneration of CP/MP/HP is multiplied by a factor of 10. You can also use the QB cloak in its later stages, and your strength is increased by 50. Rule Breaker. Due to your unpredictable nature and constant refusal to follow rules, you've gained this perk. Seal Intermediate LV5. You know seals better than the average chunin. Although you can't make seals like your dad or master, you can make the basic storage and explosive seals along with your own seals. Gain 50% more XP when practicing sealing. Reduced cost of CP by 70%. Clone XP increased by 20%. For every 10 LV gain 1 extra skill point. Gamer's Mind. This passive ability calms the user's mind in stressful situations and may even remove the capability to feel fear. It also protects their mind from any negative status effects and abilities and lets the user calmly analyze the situation at hand. Gamer's Body. With this passive perk, your body will always be in its peak, that be for training or for war, you'll be ready for it. It keeps your muscles from deteriorating or atrophying in case of a coma, provides the user with the best metabolism possible and a healthy lifespan. Friendly Aura. This perk is gained due to your capability to make friends with literally anyone. Whether they be enemies or strangers is of no problem for you. Talk no Jutsu. Less of a skill and more of a perk. This allows you to skillfully talk and or persuade your opponent into surrendering or turning them into an ally. May not always work. Man of Steel. You've trained your body so much that your skin is as thick as steel. With this perk you can ignore small projectiles, block weapons such as swords, and negate 20 to 50% of damage. Talk about unbreakable. Devil's Luck. No one knows whether it's from the gods, devils, or just plain stubbornness, but your luck is through the roof. Anything can happen, whether good or bad. Going on a mission? Won't be easy if you're dodging thousands of attacks. Skills. Shadow Clone Mastered. This jutsu was created by the second Hokage for training, information gathered, and espionage. It consumes 150 CP per clone created, and with your reserves you can use this day and night, and not get tired. When dispelled, all clones will relay their memories back to their creator, including any and all exhaustion they may experience. However, they cannot relay any muscle training besides muscle memory. For every clone dispelled, gain 10 CP. Every clone dispelled grants a 10% EXP bonus. While leveling skills. Chakra cost reduced by 40%. Costs 5 CP/MP per clone to use. Rasengan Mastered. This jutsu was created by your father and taught to you by your godfather Jiraiya. It's a sphere made of spiraling chakra which spins in every direction and is self-sustainable in power. CP cost reduced by 95%. Damage increased by 70%. Chance to inflict bleeding status 65%. Chance to inflict disoriented status 60%. Cost 5 CP/MP per Rasengan to use. Rasen Shuriken LV5, your own personal jutsu that combines the Rasengan and your wind affinity, creating this beauty of molecular destruction. CP cost is reduced by 30%, increased to 50% in Sage mode. Damage increased by 10% and is stackable up to 100x, increased to 200x in Sage mode. Chance to inflict bleeding status 75% to 85% while in Sage mode. Chance to damage opponent's chakra pathways 80%. Chance to paralyze opponent 1%. Cost 70 to 50 CP/MP per Rasen Shuriken to use. Sage Mode Mastered. Learn from the toads of Mount Mayaboku. This skill lets the user gather and manipulate nature energy to use in hand-to-hand combat, infuse it into attacks to make them stronger, increase sensing abilities, damage, defense, and chakra. Increase user's CP by 1000 for every 10% nature chakra. Increase defense by 30%. Increase attack by 30%. Increase speed by 30%. Cost of all senjutsu attacks reduced by 30%. Observe, mastered, the ability to see and observe anything the user wishes. It can show various information from abilities of any opponent, their level, their stats and perks, to a weapon's stats, buffs and special skills. Coupled with gamer's mind and gamer's body, this ability is a must-have for any gamer. Iron Skin LVE2, if Man of Steel wasn't enough, then here's more. With this skill you can use your chakra to harden your skin to unfathomable levels, although beware as it costs a lot to use although it's easily maintained. Costs 5 CP/MP. Costs 1 CP/MP to maintain. Boosts defense by 40%, increased if you have perk, Man of Steel to 80%. Shadow Step LV6, the shadows are your friends. When using Shadow Step you have increased stealth and lower detection chance. Cost 2 CP/MP per use, none to maintain. Increased stealth when in shadows. Chance of detection lowered by 50%. Stealth takedown lethality increased by 60%. Speed increased by 10 while concealed by shadows. Silver Tongue LVE3, as a ninja you must know how to lie, however your lying capabilities are not of desirable standard. Chance of lying undetected lowered by 70%. Chance to anger opponent increased by 70%. Cost 17 CP/MP to use and none to maintain. Chance to inflict seduce status effect decreased by 90%, increased to 100% when honest or using talk no jutsu. Uzumaki Chakra Chains, locked due to your heritage as an Uzumaki you can use chakra chains, or you could if you unlock them. These chains can seal, restrict and bind almost anything you want, as long as you got the chakra to make it. Cost 5 CP/MP per chain. Cost 2 CP/MP to maintain. Can seal away opponent's chakra/mana, locked. Can restrict/bind opponent. Cost reduced to 1 CP/MP due to being a natural Uzumaki. Chain strength, bind, seal increased by 20% per 3 LV. Water Dragon LV4, just like Zabuza and Kakashi you can make badass water dragons. Although it takes more chakra than usual, it also pack a higher punch than usual, so it a win-win for you. Chakra cost decreased by 15%. Has a chance to inflict dizzy status effect. Gain 10% more XP when casting Water Dragon. For every 5 LV gain 10% more Water Nature XP. Damage increased for every 10 LV by 9%. Chakra Wires LV7, when chains are nowhere, go for the next best thing, wires. Acquired from a spider dungeon, these wires are as sharp as a razor and can slice and dice anything weaker than it. They can also be dipped with poison for better effect. Cost decreased by 40%. Minus 5% chance to inflict bleeding status effect. STR and def increased by 5 for every 15 LV. DPS damage increases over time. Equipment. Red coat. With this stylish coat you're on the road to being a badass. Now you just need to find a sword and pair of guns. Increase all weapon damage. CP/MP/HP regeneration increased by 20% per 30 LV. Chance to dodge increased by 15%. Leather pants, just your ordinary pants. Increased defense. XP gained increased by 5%. Dexterity increased by 15. Leather combat boots, boots that let you walk on any surface and let you stick to them. Also pretty defensive for your feet. Dexterity increased by 5. Increased chance to dodge by 40%. Accuracy increased by 30%. Claymore blade, an unnamed blade dropped from a dungeon enemy, now stands beside you. As your very own weapon. Can be used to slice and dice most enemies and channel chakra and mana through it. Has a 1% chance to inflict Faustian curse. Causes great damage against holy and demonic enemies. Grants holy resistance by 20%. His eyes sparkled as he read all the perks, skills and his equipment. He was so cool. He also needs to name that blade he found, and I know I said its name was Rebellion, but I'd like to change it to something different but similar. Wait a minute. He has a what now? He reread again and again to make sure his eyes weren't deceiving him, and yup, it read clear as had a bloodline. His eyes shined with joy at the thought of being able to have something from his mom, well besides the furry bastard. People looked weirdly at the boy as his attitude jumped from normal to overjoyed in the span of a second, but he didn't mind, he had endured worse. Opening the front door, he gave a shout and back. Before he put his school shoes beside his regular ones and hanged his uniform back in its place. He then went to the kitchen as his stomach grumbled in hunger. What he didn't expect was Rias in an apron whistling happily as she stood over a frying pan with some eggs and bacon sizzling in oil. Hey, Rias, not that I'm glad you're making lunch or anything, but why are you here? He asked slowly as to not anger the red-haired devil. He would need to get used to that. Oh hey Naruto. She gave a happy greeting before looking at him sternly. Well, talk about your recent walk later. As for why I'm here? Making lunch, of course. She finished with a smile as she tried to appear as happy as possible, all the while small beads of sweat traveled down her face. Heh? Are you saying that just because you want to eat my food or what? He replied, suddenly very confused as he looked at her questioningly. She looked aghast at his words, her body flinching as if hit by some sort of invincible arrow. Naruto, how could you accuse me of being so mean and evil? There was no real accusation in her tone, she had merely done it for the sake of humor. He did smile, which made her own even bigger. So what were you doing skipping school? And with Yuki of all people as well? Finally, after setting down and plates and taking a seat, she asked him the one thing that was on her mind since the morning. Naruto, who was in usual Naruto fashion stuffing his face with food, looked up, gulped down the eggs and replied, oh that. She made me study at her place. He spoke in a laid-back tone before it shifted into one of sadness. Rias, you can't let her make me study so much, please. He pleaded as he looked at her with teary eyes, looking much like a puppy on the streets. It worked, as Rias couldn't resist as Ahe got up from her own seat and hugged him as she began to rub his hair. Don't worry Naru, I'll see if can get her to lower the amount of things she'll try to make you study. She gave him a pat on the head and a quick peck on the cheek as she returned to her own seat with a flushed face. After they had finished their lunch, the two sat on his couch as some show played on its small screen. We find a couple of teens sitting relatively close next to each other, as they both yawned as the chirp of crickets slowly lulled them to sleep. Man, he paused as he let out another yawn, should definitely go to sleep, he finished as his eyes slowly drooped down, and he tried with all his might to keep them opened. Hearing no response, he turned his head to call again before his mouth froze in place as his brain seared the new image into its surface to remember. Rias, with her head laid in his lap with closed eyes as her hair was sprawled everywhere yet still covered her like a red velvet, mouth was slightly ajar as air came in and out in slow intakes of breath, with her chest rising and falling slowly as his eyes also followed the two great mounds of sensitive flesh as it accompanied the motion. His eyes glanced back to her lips, which now held a slightly glossy appearance. They looked so firm yet soft, plump and kissable. Yawn. He wondered what they felt like before he himself slowly drifted into the comfort of sleep. His mind was blurry, and so were his eyes when he tried to open them, so he tried to blink the haze away, and he did so although it took him a few tries. Looking around, as limited as his movement was, he could see that he was still in his apartment, and it seems as though they both fell asleep on the couch last night. He wondered if she left like last time, so swiftly he turned his eyes from the ceiling down forwards. He was fairly surprised to see the long red curtain that formed the face of his bedmate, Rias Gremory, and his eyes were passionately absorbing every detail they could see. From how her bangs framed her face, and the way her hair flowed onto the couch, and he could even see stray locks going forward as they passed her shoulder. His eyes continued to trail her very attractive figure, as his brain memorized every curve and the way the fabric of her dress simply accented her natural beauty. His eyes did linger on her heavenly mounds, as Issei would say, and he couldn't disagree with that. Her were amazing in size, yet they never seemed to sag even for a bit. They were also very curvy and perky as well, with her poking through her dress. Ignoring that fact, Naruto continued to observe her body with great detail and intrigue, as many girls and older women back home would have happily killed for a figure like the one Rias had. As he gazed down onto her legs, he couldn't help but marvel how long they were, yet they were also slender but not unnaturally thin, as they still had that sort of desirable thickness without being too thick as to be considered fat. He suddenly wondered how she maintained herself, as it would probably take hours and hours of gentle and delicate care to make every part he was currently seeing as amazing as it was. He wondered if she ever had a boyfriend. If so, had she ever? No, he shook his head many times to stay clear of such suddenly perverted thoughts. Curse you, Jiraiya, for corrupting him at some level. While Naruto was cursing and shouting at his godfather within the confines of his mind, Rias had in that time woken up and was currently looking at Naruto with mirth, as his face flashed into various emotions such as curiosity, lust, anger, as he then jumped from one to another. Her smile widened as she could no longer hold in her chuckles, which slowly grew into a melodious laugh which seemed to snap the boy out of his mental conversation. Hwa? Oh, morning, Rias. After being properly brought back, Naruto had taken a moment to realize Rias was awake before he greeted her in his usual cheerful manner in a way that Rias couldn't help but smile, and ho, couldn't she? He looked so adorable with the way his eyes squinted as his mouth made the largest grin she had ever seen, and the way those whisker marks made him look like an adorable fox or cat. She had almost tried to hug him to death while she squealed keyword being almost as she kept herself cool and collected while giving Naruto a smile in return. So I guess this means we fell asleep last night? Naruto awkwardly stated as he scratched the back of his neck while his eyes observed Rias, who gave a small chuckle before she was calm enough to respond, yes we did, although I'm surprised it happened, as I can usually stay up for way longer than a couple hours. Maybe it had something to do with how warm it was. Or maybe because Athema was so romantic. Rias then went on to mutter words so quickly he couldn't understand what she said anymore, although he did catch something about warmth, mood and romance. Was it really that romantic, as all they did was spend some time together while watching some random comedy? What was it called again? Witwang Theory? No, sounds too stupid. Maybe it was Big Mac Theory? No, that was stupid and a fast food item, so he was sure it wasn't called that. Anyway, the point was that he didn't feel it was all that romantic, or that there was any effort shown in it being like that. Maybe it was a girl's thing? Nah, couldn't be. Rias wasn't really your typical girl. No, she was an elegant and confident woman who cared about her club members, something she couldn't and probably wouldn't stop bothering him about, but god damn it, he wouldn't join any club. He was that serious. Rias, hey Rias, wake up Rias, we got school to attend, as much as it pains me to say it, stated Naruto, as he shook the red-headed girl back from La La Land. Way? Oh, yes, cool. Rias blinked a few times before she plainly replied as a fog appeared to cloud her eyes as she began to move and put on her clothes in a robotic fashion. It made Naruto slightly worried and afraid she mentally broke, or something, although he was relieved when Rias let out a deep sigh. Sometimes I do hate the fact that we have to go to school, she stopped mid-speech to turn her head and look at him. What? She asked as she raised a delicate eyebrow while Naruto blinked as he was getting dressed. Well, I can't say I'm not surprised that the great lady of Ko is depressed about going to school, he replied after finishing putting on his shirt, and he put heavy sarcasm on her title, to which she looked confused. What's wrong with me being called that? Everyone does it. Also, will you join my club? She acknowledged that everyone did it, although most of them were admirers and wouldn't dare come close to her. It made her frown slightly, although her expression quickly returned to normal as she looked at Naruto, waiting for his response, as she also asked yet again for him to join her club. Said Blonde adopted a thoughtful look as he gazed at the ceiling. I hate it. I hate the title and the fact that no one calls anyone they deem as an idol by their name. What's so weird about that? Is it not okay to call your peers and friends by their names? What else am I supposed to use if I can't say their name? Rias wondered if Naruto was complaining, whining, or doing both, as Ji's arms flared in every direction as he tried to convey his anger at the way most of the people in school never used her name, and it made her curious. He also blinked before he blankly responded, no, I'm not joining. Undisturbed, she continued, so what would you call someone? She couldn't help but ask. Her curiosity was pushing her to ask the boy, to know whether he was like the others or if he was different. Naruto meanwhile turned to her, and his eyes seemed to glow with pride and confidence, something which made her smile. I'd call you Rias, of course. What else would I do but call my precious people by their names, he proudly stated, as he also conveniently ignored the fact that he called people by a nickname, and not their actual name. While he was not looking, Rias could stop her eyes from widening in shock as she slowly understood what he just proclaimed. He didn't consider her just a friend, just another person he hung around with. No, he considered her one of his precious people, people he cared for. She also failed to realize he considered all his friends his precious people, but she was too deep into dreamland to understand. School had went on as usual, boring teachers who simply went on and on about whatever the lesson was about, with few verbal warnings to chatty students who couldn't keep their mouths shut. Naruto had been bored yet again, and was trying to occupy his attention with anything with even the slightest amount of interest, but was failing. He did think about bothering Yuki, but she was deeply focused on the lesson, and if he interrupted her he might face her own brand of feminine fury in the form of studying and mock tests. Cold shiver down his spine. Well, all that was left was either prank the Stuko or go practice more of his abilities, but he had a crap ton of shadow clones, so why'd he do that now? So much to figure out and so little time. And so George Washington had led his men to battle and waged a long and bloody battle against his enemies, and blah 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 blah. Naruto had tried to focus and back on the lesson, but it was so boring his mind automatically tuned it out into boorish speech. He wondered if there was anything good to watch, Maybe he should try out some anime, as Rias did mention she would sometimes watch it when she had free time, although the way her eyes shined and how her smile brightened to match Rock Lee's made him think it was more than just a simple hobby or interest. Still, he'd give it a try if only he found out where to get it, as he still sucked on this world's technology. He had been so enveloped in his own thoughts he had almost missed the dismissing ring of the bell, at which he let out a happy sigh, packed his bag and went outside for a breath of fresh air. As he walked past many students he heard multiple someones in fact, calling his name, so turning around he raised his hand to greet them. "Naruto-san, ohayou," greeted a very excited voice. "Hello Naruto-san," came a much more relaxed and quite polite voice. "Hey Naruto, wanna fight?" Lastly came a very brash and also excited voice, but for a different reason. Standing before him were three girls, all clothed in white gis with different colored belts, which probably meant they were from the martial arts club, which by its name centered around various fighting arts around the world and also sent participants to various tournaments either in teams or solo. "Hey girls, what's up?" he calmly greeted as he waved at them, much like his sensei would. "What you need?" The brash one stepped forward. "I'd like you to join our club and I'll challenge you for it," she hotly proclaimed. He gave a look of thinking as he scratched his head before looking at her. "Maybe next time. I have some important things to do right now," he lazily replied. "However, I'll call you if I ever want that fight," he added as an afterthought as he walked away towards his next class. Meanwhile, the club president looked frozen in her place while her comrades silently snickered or giggled. Finally, he'd found his way to his next class, which was math, his worst nightmare. Oh well, at least Yuki was there so he wouldn't be bored. "So Naruto-san, how was your date with Rias?" coolly asked Yuki as the teacher continued to drone on and on about formulas and equations. He looked surprised at her choice of topic. "Oh, that was more of a dinner than a date. We went to this fancy restaurant, had a nice talk about ourselves, then we went and grabbed some ice cream before we were attacked by these Yakuza." He was interrupted by the blue-haired girl looking at him in shock. "Yakuza? Why were they after you too?" she asked. "Well, I kinda beat up one of their own and took his stuff," he shamefully explained as he rubbed his cheek before he continued. "So the big man's right-hand man came after us, and I gave him a beatdown, and he escaped, Willis saying he'd meet me again. I don't really believe him," he finished with an uncaring shrug of his shoulders. "Hey you two, are you gonna pay attention or are you going to continue your ladies' talk?" asked the annoyed teacher at having his lesson interrupted by the two who had shamed to look down as they apologized, while one of them did as the other simply grumbled how it was boring. Another 2 classes came and passed, and now it was lunchtime, with various students either going to the cafeteria to buy whatever was in store today, or went with their friends with their homemade bentos, or whatever they brought with them. Naruto himself was eating a meal he'd bought from a dungeon that had a shopping district. It was a simple sandwich with chicken and friend mushrooms, dried salted jerky and lettuce. He also had some milk he'd bought from a farmer to quench his thirst after eating. Sounds of ruffling clothes brought his attention as Kaneko sat down with a plate of friend salmon, friend potatoes, a salad and mochi and began silently eating alongside him. He spent a couple of minutes looking at the girl before he gave a small shrug and continued on his sandwich. A comfortable silence formed around the 2 students relaxing under the tree, and many others who'd kept watch couldn't help but yuku and awe at the adorable sight of the 2 looking like an older brother spending time with his adorable younger sister. It also made others start rumors about how the 2 were dating each others, though they were engaged for some reason. Anyway, point is they looked very cute together. Lunch break ended and everyone went back to their classes. Many would have immediately gotten bored if there wasn't a sound coming from the school gate. Many did thank whoever made the distraction. A whole group of Yakuza members stood in front of the school professionally, and some wild dead guns, still dressed in the same black suit and sunglasses, while Fujin and Kung Lao were still dressed in their usual white and blue suits respectively. "Apologies for interrupting any important lessons, but we'd like to speak with one student named Uzumaki Naruto. And before anyone tried anything heroic, please remember that we have a hostage," calmly spoke Fujin as he pulled Rias by her tied hands from behind the black-suited men as he held her at gunpoint. Naruto looked on with gritted teeth as his eyes narrowed, while also flashing between his usual blue and a demonic red with slits for pupils. "These bastards saw me with Rias last night, so they somehow kidnapped her. Fuck, how do I get her out while also kicking their ass?" Naruto ranted in his mind as he tried to think of a plan to save Rias before he quickly sighed as he stood up and went for the door. Many looked at him in surprise, while the teacher was the first to recover as he hurriedly spoke. "Wait, Uzumaki, you aren't seriously thinking of complying with them?" Naruto looked over his head as he spoke back. "Yeah, those bastards got Rias, and I'm about to whoop their ass." His eyes narrowed as everyone felt their voice stuck in their throat as a sort of pressure pressed against them while Naruto walked away towards the gate. "Please Naruto, don't listen to them," Rias hoped and pleaded mentally as she didn't want to see the kind boy get beat up by the gangster or worse. Hey asshole! You want a piece of me? Well, get your sorry ass over here and come get it! Shouted a calm Naruto as he calmly walked towards them with many of the many pointing their guns at him before the leader stepped forward. Uzumaki Naruto, I said we'd meet again and I delivered. My boss wasn't very happy when I came back with failure at this. The right-hand man showed his hand lacked a finger. I was punished for my failure, and tasked of eliminating you instead of simply capturing you. This time I won't fail, said man calmly took off his suit, leaving him in his shirt and pants as he took a basic boxing stance. She couldn't stop herself as Rias shouted out, Naruto, don't. You'll simply get beat up. She didn't want to see him hurt, to see him broken and bloodied like her friends have been. Shut up. I have to do this, or else they'll hurt you. And I can't let myself not do something to protect you, my friend. No, my precious pre-son. You were the only one I told that story to. You comforted me when I wasn't at my best, so what kind of friend would I be if I left you be in danger like this? So come on, you and me, right now! He roared as he charged, fists ready to strike. Fujin leaned to the left so the attack dodged past him. However, he didn't anticipate he would get kicked in his kidney, then punched in his chest with his legs being swept under him. After a moment of recollection, he stood up, calmly brushed off any dust, and jumped at the fist struck Naruto's chest, and everyone could hear a crack echo as a rib shattered. His foot dashed for the blonde's knee as it bent forward and Naruto was forced to follow. He did try and counter-attack with a punch, but it was stopped either followed by a headbutt which broke the gangster's hold on his wrist, which he capitalized on as he sent a kick to his chest, sending him landing to the ground. The man jumped upwards, kicking a surprised Naruto straight in his chin as he then followed by grabbing a hold of his arm and twisting it backwards. Do you yield? He scared the boy, now slightly angered. He received another headbutt as he responded by further twisting his arm as the sound of breaking and his screaming echoed throughout the school. Many students cried at seeing one of their own injured in such a way. Teachers held other rowdy students from trying to interfere. Meanwhile, Rias was busy crying as she saw Naruto get his arm broken because of her. Why did you do that, you idiot? I could have solved this on my own, yet you had to go and risk your life for me. She yelled in her mind as tears continued to fall down her face. You're my first ever friend I made by myself, so don't you dare die on me, Naruto. HSE finally couldn't hold herself as she gave a pained yell at her new friend, although it did pain her heart, but she didn't realize. Hearing Rias call out to him, he looked at her and frowned at seeing her flushed face. He felt his heart quench at seeing her pained expression and how her eyes welled with tears. For him. Wow, didn't think I'd get hurt or that Rias would cry like that. Now I really have to beat your ass for making such a pretty girl cry, although I will get a beating of my own. He smiled as he lifted his head before he kneed the older man in his balls, then punched him in his face while stomping on his leg, and when the man was down he crouched with his knee on Fujin's chest. Wow, that was easier than I thought. Now, do you surrender or what? He smugly stated as he looked at the defeated Yakuza. I'd rather die than admit defeat, stubbornly said the man as he gave coughs in between. Well, good thing the cops were informed on my way. His smugness increased as he saw the man's eyes widen. What, you thought I wouldn't call the cops? Now that's just stupid. A roar of sirens interrupted his talk. Well, talk about timing, he joked as he lifted him up when Teo officers took him over and handcuffed him, and read his crimes sheet many along with his rights before he and his crew were taken away by the police. A red blur flashed before his eyes as he caught Rias, who was yet again crying, this time in his arms. You stupid idiot, why would you do that? Hey, would you do something like risk your own life? She weakly pounded his chest with each why before her arms grew weak and limped at his sides, slowly embracing him. The two laid there awkwardly as Ria's cries slowly diminished into whimpers with Naruto holding his one good hand around her. After she calmed down, she grabbed him with both of her arms and slowly picked him up onto his feet. Ugh, damn it, Naruto, how do you weight this Michigan? She complained with a pout while he chuckled. Probably from all the ramen I eat. Come on, let's head to the infirmary, he joked as he wrapped his single arm around her shoulders. Well, at least it's only one arm and not both, he laughed at his own poor joke, while his companion humped as she folded her arms under her chest, knowingly or unknowingly making them perk up more. Well, don't expect me to help you next time you get hurt, see if I care them, she huffed again as he turned her head with her nose held high as Naruto looked back at her. Hey, I was just joking. You can't leave a guy all alone, he awkwardly chuckled as she still held her back turned from him. The school day had finally ended and they were on their way back to their individual homes. His eye flicked to his left as he felt a pair of very small arms wrap around his injured one, and he saw Kaneko look down at the ground. Stupid senpai, be more careful next time, she softly whimpered as Naruto looked at her with guilt. I'd listen to her, Naruto-san. Kaneko knows to be just as stubborn when she's like this. Beside her arrived Kiba as he spoke to his fellow blonde. A teasing laugh came beside Rias as she looked at her friend. Arabucho seems to have been saved by her charming prince. Maybe now she'll proclaim her undying love as they make out passionately under the moonlight. Akino teased the blushing duo while she continued to laugh at their crimson faces. Kaneko looked up as she looked at Rias with something in her eyes, but nobody looked, so they couldn't say or see what it was. Well, this is my stop. I'll see everyone tomorrow, said Naruto as he waved to the group, although he couldn't help but show his annoyance as Rias called out. Will you join our club? She shouted, again excited for him to join as she'd like more opportunities to know more about him, about why Grafia personally came to register him as a student. No, he shouted back. Why not? She whined as she looked down, arms limp as noodles. Because I don't wanna, he whined back again. So will you join if I make you? She yelled now with mock anger. Maybe, he responded cheekily before they devolved into shouts of yes and no. Farther back, Rias Peerage looked on in amusement as she continued her fight with Naruto. They look like an old couple, coldly spoke Kaneko as Ahe looked at the two, silently wishing Naruto was giving her head pats instead of arguing with her king. Don't be like that, Kaneko, they do look adorable, defended Kiba as he saw how happy Rias was after her date with Naruto, as she saw all gloom and doom before yesterday, when she thought nobody was looking. I agree, Kiba-kun, they look so teasable. I can't wait until they become official, Akino semi-joked before she outright laughed at Kiba's stupefied expression. Kaneko's brooning hot glare directed both at her and at Rias. Naruto had thrown his bag at his desk, took off his uniform and put it in its place, then went and made himself a simple breakfast of pasta and minced meat with some sauce he bought. Then he had a shower and hot ready for bed. When in bed he realized he could watch some anime, so he decided on this one called Jujutsu Kaisen. He felt he could understand Yuji, who had this demon inside him, although it wasn't sealed in him by his father but by ingesting one of its fingers. He felt his stomach retch at the thought of having to eat that nasty-ass finger. I mean, seriously, who the hell would eat that thing? Continuing, he did like the fight scenes as they were fun to watch, and Gojo kinda reminded him of Kakashi-sensei with his happy attitude, and also his OP eyes. Seriously, that shit was as bad as the Sharingan. Slowly he felt sleep call to him, and his body answering as his eyes slowly shut close. Hours after he'd fallen asleep, a crimson glow emanated in the room as Rias came out from a circle in the floor. Can't believe him doing this willingly, she thought, embarrassed as she undressed herself down to her birthday suit before slowly climbing into bed with Naruto, as she began to share her demonic energy with him. She could feel her energy oozing to get into his body as it absorbed her power like a sponge, although he did feel very warm and comfortable. However, through the embarrassment and dirty thoughts, she did manage to feel some type of energy within him. It felt very much like him, warm, comforting, powerful, embracing and soothing. She could feel herself relax as she embraced him. She did wonder if he had a girlfriend before. If so, did they kiss? Did they sleep like this, did they? She slightly shook her head to banish such thoughts. No other girl talked or even interacted with him besides herself and Kaneko, that much she knew. Somewhere deep inside she asked herself, why do I care so much about him, as she drifted away into comfortable dreams while hugging the best pillow in her opinion. Again he woke up to the sight of his beige ceiling and a comfortable warmth beside him. It seems as if his pillow had gotten warmer and softer. Wait a minute. Wait a goddamn minute. Pillows don't have natural warmth or softness, so it only left one option. His eyes slowly turned from the ceiling and slowly turned next to him, and he could feel his breath still at the sight. With the sun's rays filtered through the blinds and cast onto her sleeping form, to him she had the perfect appearance of an angel, to him at least. He also thought about the fact that she was here, in his bed, although that shouldn't be too weird since they've already sought together on multiple occasions. That felt so embarrassing. He could feel his face heating, blazing at the thought of him and Rias. He didn't know why, but his heart beat faster at the thought of Rias staying for him. That she'd be so worried as to check up on him so late at night. Slowly shifting around so as to not wake her up, he again took in her appearance. He couldn't help but admire how every detail felt perfect, every curve in just the right place, not perfection but certainly close. He'd thought from the moment it first happened that maybe, just maybe, Uzumaki Naruto had fallen in love, and yet he reminded himself she was a devil. Why should that matter? She was probably using him for her own goals, but could she do that? She was just being friendly with him to try and get him as another one of her slaves, but why would she try and get to know you? Such thoughts swirled around in his mind as he tried to understand her motives for this, for everything really. For why she accepted that dinner. He mentally corrected himself. It was stupid of him to think she'd actually agree to a date, and yet somewhere deep inside a small part of himself hoped it wasn't so. Okay, enough whining and bitching. Let's see what the clones I left to go dungeon clearing have managed to accomplish. He calmed down as he began listing over everything his clones leveled up, learned, He also looks to have missed a daily quest and was sent to a penalty zone. Although difficult, it was easier with rebellion, and oh, what was this, a skill? Unlimited blade works. By the description he saw that he could trace, which includes understanding the materials needed to create the weapon/object, its history and abilities, certain weapons/objects, and copy them in a sort of mental vault and then later project them as actual objects, or rather weapons in his case. There was also a warning, but the clone ignored it, so it couldn't be that bad. Although UBW is good, it does use a considerable amount of mana and or chakra to manifest and use, with a cost of 15 CP/MP per projection and 15 CP/MP per minute to maintain. But seeing as he could basically copy weapons that could either twist space, manipulate luck, and whatnot, he decided, or rather his clone decided, the purchase was worth it. Even if it left him with 15 tokens left over after said purchase, but he was sure he'd get them back. On other news, his Fuinjutsu went up from LV5 to LV16, which was very handy as now he could easily make medium-level barriers, explosive notes, with a higher blast radius and greater explosion, gravity seals for training, which was a big plus, and he was on his way to find a seal which could replicate his Uzumaki chakra chains, which would definitely help in future battles and pranks. He almost cackled at the possibilities. It seems as if his almost maniacal laughter seemed to wake up Rias, who was yawning lightly along with stretching her arms high above her head, and his eyes couldn't help but go lower as her jiggled at the sudden motion. "Morning, princess, had a nice nap?" he teasingly spoke. It took a moment for her brain to restart and realize what he said, but when she did, he brought his arms up just in time to block an onslaught of slaps and punches as the Gremry heiress tried to punish him for teasing her so early in the morning, and with a pout while doing so which made his feeble attempts to resist laughing crumble as he guffawed loudly, and Rias increased her punches in response, which just made her pout more and thus make her more adorable. Finally, after minutes of trying to hurt Naruto, she stopped as her arms were tired by this point, chest greedily gasping for air while Naruto looked at her seemingly amused by something. "What?" she asked after she finally got her breath back and noticed Naruto staring at her with that annoying smile of his, and no, it wasn't the usual warm or kind smile, but I want to punch him in the face kind of smile. "Well, I'm just thinking how cute you are all out of breath like that. Maybe I could take it away with something else," he replied teasingly as his smile sharpened, and so did Rias' annoyance. And Rias didn't like that smile, she decided. "Like you'd have anything to take it with," she haughtily replied with her face turned away and raised nose along with folded arms. Minutes passed, and as Rias thought about what he said and the way he said it, her face began to slowly feel warmer and warmer. Did he really mean it like that? What if he was just joking? But it didn't sound like he was joking. Was he teasing? Sure, but not joking. Would he really do that with MME? As she began to think, her mind had shown her images of her and Naruto on dates, similar to the dinner she had with him a few days ago, watching anime together cuddled up in their home. She could see herself along with Naruto and a bunch of red and blonde-haired children who are running around all happy and laughing. It makes her stomach deepen, twist and compress into an abyss, like one she's never felt before, and she could feel her heart speed up at the thought of being with him, waking up and being greeted by that smile every morning as they go about their day. And yet her joyous smile slowly morphs into a depressed frown as she thinks about him, who wouldn't leave her alone no matter what she did, nor how many times she told him he just wouldn't accept her saying no to him like the douchey cockadoodle dick he was. And now she was sad and angry, and her mood was ruined by that chicken jerk asshole. It was so ruined and wrecked that Naruto noticed her quick shift in expressions and frowned himself. Rias?" he cautiously called out. "You okay? I didn't make you mad, did I?" he asked, worried that he may have messed up with his friend who is certainly not his girlfriend. Okay, that sounded weird, but his point still stood. He liked Rias, but he didn't know if Rias likes him the same way he does, plus there's the fact that she's a devil, something she has hidden from him, although it would be hypocritical of him to hate her for not telling her secrets, when he himself wasn't as honest as he wanted to be. "Yeah, I'm okay. Just thinking about some stuff," she replied after minutes of silence. "Well, now that we're up and awake, I'd thought now would be a good time to exchange numbers so we can text each other," she added hopefully, as she really wanted to talk more with him. She really wanted to know what he could and couldn't do if she wanted to resurrect him as one of her pieces, and this would be the perfect opportunity. "Good job, Rias, good job." And while the Gremry heiress was giving herself a mental congratulations and pat on her back, Naruto was looking confused as he'd barely used this world's technology, with him knowing basics on how to use his computer and access the internet, play video games, but besides that he was as clueless as always. So obviously when Rias noticed his confused look, she was equally confused herself. How could this boy not have a phone when he obviously had a TV to watch anime, which in her humble opinion it was the best thing to watch, and a decent PC which he probably used to play games of a certain genre? "Wait, do you really not have a phone?" she eventually asked as she realized he was silent, perplexed that such a thing was possible. Well, I guess we'll go on a shopping trip and see what else you need, she sighed, as she had no idea her new friend would lack something many deem a basic necessity in this modern world of electronics and AI, although that last one was still in development. The current available options were something one would see in a movie or TV show, but that wasn't their focus right now. Quickly getting dressed, she looked back at him with eyes full of blazing conviction. Come on, hurry and get dressed. You don't think breakfast is going to make itself, do you? Also, we're going to the nearest tech shop and get you a phone, then return here and watch some anime. She told him with such strength in her tone he almost felt his body waver at how commanding she sounded before nodding and hastily put on his clothes before joining her downstairs to eat breakfast. After a quick break fast, they went outside and strolled down the streets at a leisurely pace. They weren't rushing anywhere, so they could take their time and she could use this chance to know him more. So you said you have a godfather. What is he like? Rias asked curiously, as when they were chatting and getting to know more about each other during their dinner, Naruto had mostly mentioned the people in his life but never went into detail about who they were, what their jobs are, and the relationships he had with them. So one couldn't blame her for being so curious, as she was about the mystery that was Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's face scrunched up, his eyebrows narrowed into something similar to an arrow, and seeing that Rias had to physically bring her desire to outright laugh down to a shake of her shoulders as her mouth twitched and spasmed as if it was hit by electricity, something that Naruto either ignored or didn't notice, which she was grateful for. Well, it's kind of a sore topic for me, he began, his expression still serious, and Rias opened her mouth to ask why but was cut off as he continued, I don't talk about my past mostly because I'm uncomfortable talking about dead people. Some, like my parents, died the day I was born, but I still got to know them through their friends and other people who knew them, while others, like my godfather, died when I was 15, he finished as he closed his eyes so she wouldn't see how his eyes stung with barely held tears. Rias looked at Naruto with a sad gaze. She never would have expected someone so sunny and cheerful to have experienced a childhood with possibly no friends. She mentally promised she'd do all in her power to become his friend and make him truly smile. Pushing aside those thoughts for now, her hand reached out and took a hold of his as she sped up to try and get to the store before rush hour, and didn't seem to notice how Naruto's cheeks flushed red at the contact as he admired how soft and delicate her hand felt in his own with dainty fingers wrapped around his. At the store, their entry could be described as nothing shy of bursting through the door, as Rias immediately exclaimed with joy, "Hi! My friend," and I, pointing to her and Naruto as she spoke, "want to get a new phone for him, as he is too stubborn to admit he can't get one, so I had to drag him over here to buy him one myself," she politely explained as the older yet still young-looking woman let out an amused chuckle, one that made Naruto blush slightly and Rias narrow her eyes slightly. "Well, for phones, we have the usual Samsung and iPhone. We also have the less used Huawei model. If you're interested, we also have Redmi Note 9 if you're interested." She offered all the models she could remember off the top of her head with a small smile. Rias looked like she'd already known which one to buy, however she was stopped from speaking by Naruto, who let out a hum of interest. "Tell me about the Redmi," he replied with interest in his tone and eyes shining with curiosity, and the cashier happily obliged. "Well, it has one of the better cameras. It's not the best but still as equally good, besides that its memory is 60 megabytes, and that's without extra memory cards," she cheerfully shouted before continuing, "Its settings are pretty customizable so you can change the things you don't like. Its speaker is okay, although you shouldn't try and listen to anything at full volume," she finished with a wider smile and closed eyes, and Naruto nodded with fierce determination. "All right, I'm sold," he yelled as he slammed his fist into his open palm. "I'll take the Redmi." After blinking owlishly, he finished with an embarrassed chuckle as Rias smiled and then let out a laugh herself, as she couldn't help but join the blonde boy's melodic laughter. After receiving and paying for his new phone, the couple walked out happy and satisfied. As they walked back to Naruto's apartment, and they discussed things like phone features and what anime they have watched or what their favorite anime is. When they arrived inside the house, they both sat on the couch as Rias began switching channels, trying to find something good to watch before settling for an anime Naruto was fairly certain he didn't know, as it was one about a boy labeled as the weakest who went to a dungeon and passed a secret test of sorts before he gained something similar to what Naruto himself currently has. He was so going to try and copy whatever useful abilities he found. As he continued to imagine what moves he'd be able to do, he noticed a slight increase in weight, and realized Rias must have laid hers head onto his shoulder, as she watched the anime with a content smile. God, how that smile made him feel all kinds of warm, happy, fulfilled, and other similar words he couldn't remember right now, but that didn't matter. What did matter is that he wants to protect Rias and her club. They were pretty cool in his opinion, what with Akino being a teaster, Kiba a gentleman prince, and Koenko just being an adorable cutie. And then there was Rias. Rias, the girl who could easily make him flustered and awkward in a matter of seconds, the girl who could make his already insanely heart beat even crazier. She could make him annoyed in 1 second, and then at the flip of a switch she'd make him laugh and smile like he wasn't mad at her. It was weird, but not a bad weird, and Naruto wanted to protect her and her friends from whatever this world would send at them. he promised, truly promised. Rias looked on in confusion as Naruto's face went through a myriad of emotions before it finally sent on firm determination. She simply chuckled softly before she continued watching her anime as a content sigh left her lips. She'd give everything to keep a moment like this. Sadly, with him she was so mad at the devil she couldn't and wouldn't speak his name. Such moments were limited and she wanted to enjoy them to the fullest, and although she did have plans to ask Naruto more questions, she let them wander off as she enjoyed the gentle silence that filled the room. The question clawed at her mind, ate at her conscience, and made her throat turn into a dry dessert. SHS simply had to know. Hey Naruto, what do you think about arranged marriages? She asked slowly with curiosity and what he would day and had to say about it. He turned his eyes, oh Satan, they were bright onto her own as they slowly looked up. Well, I think they're necessary, he began, and he was lucky he wasn't looking at her face as he missed seeing her expression freeze into one of horror and shock. But just because they're necessary doesn't mean I like them. Sure, if both parties are okay with it then it's cool, but if one of them doesn't want to then they shouldn't get married at all, and if the other party wants to, well, sucks to be them I guess, he finished with a sigh of his own as he relaxed in his couch. He'd bought a nice black leather couch from all the money from Dungeon Raiding, and he'd see what else he could buy with his newly acquired funds. However, now it was Ria's turn to shift through a whole spectrum of emotions ranging from relief to joy that the blonde had similar thoughts. Yeah, I don't like them either. Usually the one the person is forced to marry is usually an asshole. She spat every word with more venom and hatred than she intended, but it seemed to get her point across, so she paid it no mind. Although Naruto did notice her very visible sour expression when mentioning arranged marriages, he didn't know who the asshole who put her through this was. But if he did meet him in future, he would definitely give him a good punch to the face, maybe two, just to be sure. Well, anyways, I think we should start looking at what settings you'd like to keep. Ria's attempt at changing the situation couldn't be more obvious, but he went with it anyway. Better to change the subject than to keep this awkward aura surrounding them. So they went through each setting and discussed whether it was better to keep it as is or to change it. They had been so engrossed in their little adventure that almost half the day passed by before they realized what time it was and had a light snack. Okay, so, you mentioned this village you lived in before, but where is it exactly? I'm sure I've never heard of it, inquired Rias as Ahe took another bite off of her dango skewer while looking curiously at the blonde. My village? He repeated, thinking quickly of an excuse. Well, it was a medium-sized village where people were honest and hardworking. You did your part, and got paid equally to your work, so I'd usually do chores for other people here and there, get some extra money on the side, and no? He replied casually, although he was sweating bullets inside as he hoped she would buy his bullshit. Huh, that's so? She replied skeptically as she narrowed her eyes at him, looking for any trace of lies within his eyes. Yup, he nodded as he popped the P at the end. That is so amazing! She yelled excitedly as she went star-eyed. Were you like a ninja? Or maybe a mercenary, or maybe you were. So she went on another tangent on what his occupation could have possibly been, all the while Naruto smiled amusingly at the relatively normal girl who tried earnestly to be his friend. He didn't really show it, but the separation did worry his mind as he lost nights and nights of sleep thinking of what ifs and could haves. And yet these moments with Rias were a break from the chaos that was his confused mind, a burst of light in deep darkness that seemed to clear the visions and dispel the voices he'd hear from time to time. He'd also felt guilty to have lied to his new friend, although he didn't want to spill the beans too soon. Hey Naruto, if you could marry someone, who would you pick? She asked, infinitely curious as to what he'd have to say, and she certainly didn't have any ulterior motives. Nope, not her. Who'd I marry if I could do so? Well, the girl would have to be funny and positive while also being able to be serious. She should also be pretty, although that doesn't mean I'm just gonna back down if she sends a few winks at me. He hotly proclaimed before continuing. She should also be strong so that she can stand beside me as an equal. Also kind and caring. I can't deny I love kind things, also cute things, he added after a moment of thought. Rias giggled at his fiery passion and the way his eyes seemed to light ablaze as he spoke about the things he liked. She couldn't help but smile at his overall goofy attitude and how laid back he appeared. She chuckled lightly as she remembered how casually he talked to Sona the first time he met her. Many students, and even Sona herself, were left in shock as Naruto talked to her like they were childhood friends reuniting after years of separation. Once after Akino told her the story, she couldn't help but giggle and laugh at the thought of a slack-jawed, wide-eyed Sona as Naruto casually walked away. What's so funny? Asked a very confused Naruto as he tilted his head to the side. Rias had to physically and mentally restrain herself from squealing and hugging the blonde high schooler to death. He was so adorable too. Coughing lightly to recover herself, she wondered if Naruto had some sort of charm ability that no one knew of. It would explain the sudden urge to spoil him. Nothing important really, just a memory of Sona being silly when she was younger. She lied boldly so as to not clue in the less intelligent blonde on her true thoughts. Well, that's cool, I guess. He shrugged his shoulder before continuing. Anyway, I wanted to ask if you watched Bleach before? he inquired with a wide smile while Rias looked quite surprised. She didn't think he would actually watch any anime, heck she doubted he'd even give it a try, that he'd call her weird or something. Apparently she was wrong. Yeah, I began the 1,000-Year Blood War recently was her honest reply as she did enjoy the new Arc's anime adaptation. The animation was perfect, the characters were still cool and the bankais were amazing. She'd have to watch it with Naruto sometime. Yeah, well I'm at the Ichigo vs Byakuya fight. Gotta say, his bankai is pretty amazing. I mean, who would expect cherry blossoms to be that sharp or dangerous? Loudly exclaimed the blonde as he then proceeded to shout his thoughts about how awesome both fighters were and how Ichigo beat Byakuya's ass, to which Rias looked offended. Gasp! You did not say that, she retorted as she physically recoiled, as if stabbed in the heart by his words. What? Ichigo got him beat in speed and power, he'd totally win. He replied with his own anger, as he knew not why he was wrong. Byakuya has way more experience and control than Ichigo, he'd beat him silly if it wasn't for his hollow mask. She shouted back as she began jabbing her delicate finger into his manly, muscled chest. Now it was Naruto's turn to get offended. He might be more experienced, but he can't overpower Ichigo if he has his hollow mask on. Plus the Getsuga Tensho would destroy Byakuya. He yelled back at her as their foreheads clashed together in a fight for dominance. Nua! He's way faster than the Getsuga, so he could dodge it, she retorted while her eyes narrowed as she growled at him. So continued their fight over who would beat who and in which way they would do so. They had fun watching various anime like Fate, Evangelion, and whatever else caught their interest, although Naruto did take the time to go over some things as they sat on the couch as an episode played. It seemed another group of clones had dispelled. Well, it looks like he jumped again in levels and his skills as well. Wind Claw LV 15. This technique creates a beast-like claw around your hands and can pierce armor and tear flesh to atoms. Be careful not to hit yourself with it. Chance to inflict bleeding 40%. CP/MP consumption decreased by 55%. Chance to inflict molecular damage 100%. Has a chance to damage enemy's nervous system and cause paralysis. Damage and EXP increased due to wind affinity *. Well, that was neat, and by neat he meant absolutely freaking awesome. He can paralyze those damn dungeon monsters now. And make them bleed. The EXP increase was also nice, although he wondered what it was talking about his affinity. Oh well, he'd have to check it out later, as he had some more skills to look over. Steel Wires LV 7. This skill converts your chakra into thick wires of steel. With them you can make opponents bleed or defend against most attacks. They can still melt, so be careful. Chance to inflict bleed 50%. Consumes 10 CP/MP per wire. Has a chance to poison enemies. Well, that was a simple but useful skill. Wonder if he could use it himself, although he did wonder what it could cut. Well, it didn't matter for now, so he stored it away for later as he came back from his thought train, only to see a guy with white hair and very bright blue eyes beat some volcano head? He didn't know what that was about, but it looked cool. Eyes blinking slowly, he turned slowly to his side as he had realized he was watching with Rias, who was leaning on his shoulder and snoring cutely with her eyes closed and mouth partially opened as SHS slowly inhaled and exhaled and making adorable sounds. Good God, how he wished he could hug her and never let her go. And he took a moment to realize that his thoughts slowly went into darker and looter territory. What the hell is going on with me? It was really weird. His body started acting weird after he met Rias, and now his thoughts were doing the same thing. What was going on? Sure, he thought it could be due to his developing crush on the redhead, but from past experience, which he had much of, you don't start thinking those things about someone you're supposed to love. And certainly not something that creepy either, like some sort of obsessed Yandra who fell in love after a glance or a Sino meeting. They were really weird. He also wondered what today was with the sudden question on arranged marriages. Maybe she was in one, or maybe it was a friend. He wasn't sure, but whoever was in trouble he would be glad to help. He was just that kind of guy, you know. Plus a girl in tears was something he couldn't stand to see, especially when said girl was as kind and beautiful as this one. Next day. Well, today was as boring as it gets. He currently has math and the teacher was explaining some equation on triangles and numbers and what goes first, and blah blah bladdy blah. Who cares for these equations when he could A. Be using this time to train and get stronger, and B. Abuse clones to learn all this for him. Really, it was genius. He didn't waste time and he could still learn it anyway. He had to pat himself on the back for this one. He was also smiling as he thought how many of the students would cry in outrage over having an ability like this. How they could dream. He also wondered what Yuki would think about this. Why was he shivering? He felt as if doom would be upon him if he ever told her about the shadow clone. Also, why was she eyeing him suspiciously like he had done a prank? Which he may or may not have done. Meh, he was already having study sessions with her, and it wasn't like she was a part of whatever supernatural world hid itself among the humans, right? I mean, what are the odds of that happening? He could almost chuckle at how stupid it sounded. On another note, the more he used his sword, the rebellion, the more he felt like they were connecting? It was the best way to describe it, and he felt as though the sword was becoming familiar to his chakra and mana as he used wind techniques, stinger, and a new move he recently made too. So he was clearing a random zombie-infested dungeon, easily demolishing them using stinger and wind chakra when a thought came to him: what if I can use stinger, but faster? And so he tried and promptly failed to execute this new attack, so he tried again and again until finally the million stab was born. It could inflict bleed, deal twice the damage, and make you lose HP over time, and as a bonus, he could also combo it with a stinger as a finish. He also went over more memories on his clone's dungeon cleaning. There was the usual technique level up and his stats getting more points dumped into them, but apparently one of his clones had actually managed to stumble into another dungeon, while in another dungeon. A double dungeon. Apparently it was a former Nexus facility, not like the actual base but a random bulletin with some information in it. The main facility held this device called the improbability drive, whatever that was, and apparently a halo? He didn't know how a halo was important, but bits of text said it was super powerful or something? He'd have to check it out if he ever found that Yui thought about it. He was also pretty hungry. He could eat some ramen, and he would have to get Rias to try some of his homemade, which was different than the one he sold at his shop, and yes, it was that different, but that was for another time. Now, however, was the time to continue to practice his Sage mode as he could improve more, especially with the help of Emily Starr. He was trying to increase his recharge time and gathering speed to lessen both the time it took to enter Sage mode and the time it took to recover his reserves of Senjutsu. Apparently, if he was good enough, he could do more with his Senjutsu? What could he do more with Sage mode? He really had to find out, and to do that he needed to train more, but he was really curious, so maybe just a few shadow clones won't hurt. He also wondered what exactly rebellion was. It felt demonic in nature, and yet he couldn't feel any demonic energy inside it. Maybe it didn't have power? But that can't be, as he had negated various attacks magical or chakra-based, and for either you needed some form of energy to negate said attack. Maybe it was connected to that weird sensation he was feeling? He hoped so. At least then he has some form of answer, and if it wasn't, then he'd simply find out one way or another. He could spend his already limited brain power to figure out this mystery. Wait a damn minute. If his observe grants him information on things he looks at, then. He swiftly pulled out his claymore sword and applied said skill on it. Rebellion LV1. Rebellion, the demonic blade of the legendary demon Sparta. Its ability to negate magical power and damage magical entities is deadly for everyone, even its user. Some say it has a deeper, undiscovered power, but since the blade was never found, no one was able to confirm nor deny the theory. Increased damage against any magic entity asterisk. Can absorb souls to boost its user. Has a 50% chance to inflict mana/chakra burn on enemies. Healing increased by 50%. Stats increased by 10%. Whoa, Rebellion sounds pretty OP. And apparently it has something else. I wonder if I can unlock whatever it is. Naruto couldn't find the words to explain nor express how amazed he was at finding and now wielding Rebellion. It also made him question if there were other weapons similar to it. His eyes darted down to the weapon he held as it began to react, its empty eye sockets faintly glowing with crimson light as its rib-esque sides extended to form a Real Guard, but beyond that nothing else happened. He narrowed his eyes. Rebellion reacted when he mentioned weapons like it existing, so this must mean he was correct now, only if the damn thing could also show him where the weapons were. But that's not the point or focus, no. Nah dash. HM? To dash. What's someone calling him? NAR dash. It sounded familiar. Naruto. Finally the full force of the voice reached his ears, and his head, which was stinging with pain, came full force at him as well. Finally. It's like I was talking to a brick wall. Why weren't you responding, you dummy? Huffed and pouted an annoyed and angry Mio, who was trying to get his attention for the past 10 minutes. Oh Mio? I'm so sorry, I was out there in my thoughts. Could you please repeat what you said? Replied Naruto after he got his headache under control while somehow sounding as the caring older brother type, which made nearby girls swoon and blush at how kind he sounded. I said if I could go to Rias and have a sleepover. She asked me today at recess, and I told her I'd ask you. She continued pouting as she repeated her past 10 minutes of mindless explanation to the blonde. Rias? Well, I don't see why you can't go. I mean, what's the issue? He stated, pretty dumbfounded as he had no clue on why Mio was so nervous. She looked quite shocked and let out an indigenous gasp. You don't know. Looking at him, she understood that he really didn't. You really don't know. She repeated her sentence, although with added shock. Naruto simply shrugged in response to her aghast expression, as he had no idea what she was talking about. You really are dumb, she yelled out in a manner similar to a tsundere. How could you not notice our long black wings? To prove her statement, a pair of crooked black wings burst out of her back, and now it was Naruto's turn to be dumbfounded as his eyes blinked and mouth opened and closed repeatedly, unable to form a coherent response. Mio did take great satisfaction in causing Naruto to have what was an equivalent to a computer having a system crash. Expressions switching quicker than Naruto when someone mentions ramen, Mio had to wonder if Naruto really was a supernatural being. He didn't feel like a devil, nor one of the angels, so he can't be from the Judeo-Christian faction. Now she didn't know what other members of the supernatural felt like, but she was sure Naruto was none of them. Neither did he have an oppressive and heavy magic like a god, so he can't be that either. So the question she wants to answer is, what is Naruto Uzumaki? While she was theorizing about his origin, Naruto had managed to emerge out of his sudden brain crash and replied, well, I don't really know what a devil feels like, so I couldn't know you were one either, Mio-chan. He honestly spoke as the girl focused back onto him and away from her burning questions for now. Although it should have been pretty obvious that you two weren't normal, considering you were being chased by those monster things, he continued as he scraped his head in embarrassment, to which Mio responded with a smug smirk. Recess. For the brief moment, Naruto was free from the hell he now knew as school. I mean, really, what kind of maniac enjoys sitting hours a day to listen some nerd drone on about stuff that happened hundreds of years ago, or something that they would use only in super specific situations? What kind of masochist would do that? Well, whatever, he had a ramen bowl to enjoy and clouds to watch, so school was banned in his mind for now. He heard grass shift and sway, announcing the arrival of someone he knows very well. Morning, Kaneko. How's your day going? Ever cheerful, Naruto greeted the short, snow-haired girl, who turned to look at him with her super bored look and gave a single nod before turning back to her sweets, something which Naruto took in stride and continued on. So you listening any music? He smirked proudly as he saw her turn her head slightly in interest. Have any favorites like rock or maybe metal? He finished with a curious stare. Rock mostly. I do enjoy metal sometimes. Her monotonous tone was carried by the wind as she answered quickly before munching onto a chocolate bar. Oh cool, I don't really have a specific preference, and mostly listen to whatever I think sounds good. He admitted to not having any real music taste, he just went with what was good to him. The young girl simply nodded her head as she paused her munching to lay down next to him before resuming her consumption of the sweet dessert. Naruto, on the other hand, couldn't help but smile at how adorable the smaller girl was acting. She was usually pretty chill to talk to and was very relaxed, which he enjoyed because it meant he didn't have to put much effort into a whole lot of stuff and could simply kick back, relax, and have a nice friendly chat while enjoying something like cloud watching, although her reaction to his chakra was fairly interesting. At first she was scared, even frightened when he tried to approach her, and yet after a couple of minutes and lots of head petting, the girl had quickly become relaxed around him, like some sort of cat, so now whenever the two were together she would immediately get on his lap and ask for head pats, no matter the situation before, which usually made him chuckle loudly as he did so. Oh sure, they would get a stare from people passing by, but that was the full extent of their actions. No whispers, no rumors, no shouting of Lilikan, or something else. Something which he was very grateful for, as he didn't have the time nor the patience to deal with other people's stupidity. Hey senpai, what's your family like? Asked a curious Kaneko as SHS remembered his talk about family, and the saddened expression he held when talking about it. It really made her wonder what tragedy happened to his family for him to express such deep sadness. His head fully turned to look at her. Why ask? You curious? He responded with a question of his own. To a hitch she nodded slightly, however he could swear he saw a glint of something in her usually blank eyes. Well, the night I was born in my home village, a powerful beast had been unleashed by a masked man who wished to destroy my home. And his plan was working quite well. The beast crushed many houses and lit just as much aflame, and he was sure in his victory. Here he gave a small pause for dramatic effect until my father arrived, stopping one of its attacks with one of his own before meeting the man in combat. Minutes seemed like hours as the two tried and failed to defeat the other before my father had landed a surprise attack and dispelled whatever the man used to control the monster, while my mother held him down with what many described as blessed golden chains. He stopped as he observed his companion's reaction. She looked fairly shocked at his tale, what with her widened eyes and slightly open mouth, either unable or trying to comprehend his words. Well, he was somewhat correct. The fuck, she internally screamed in a very rare show of emotion. She'd never heard of such a story before, and what was more confusing than the tale itself was his mention of his mother having blessed golden chains. Now, when one mentions blessed, they usually mean made with silver or blessed by a priest. However, to Kaneko it sounded more like these were holy chains and not blessed ones, and holy things were dangerous to devils. However, she also questioned where she had acquired said chains from, because as far as she knew, no human had ever been recorded to use hokey chains. Whether they were from the church or a sacred gear, which made her ability even more dangerous. She would have to report this to Rias, even if she herself didn't want to. She noticed Naruto was about to continue his story, so she pushed such thoughts to the back of her mind, now fully focused on his words. Sadly, the chains had taken too much from her to use, so when they weakened their grip, the beast had taken this opportunity to attack me, either as a form of revenge for its entrapment, or as a last laugh sort of move. I don't really know, anyway, as it lunged at me with its arm outstretched to pierce my chest. Both of my parents jumped in between it and myself to shield me from it, and had taken the hit themselves. As he spoke slowly, tears had gathered in his eyes before slowly descending down his face while he told his tale to the young girl. They managed to seal the thing away and tell me their last words before they passed on. And before you ask, the reason I know what they told me is because a family member who was out of the village had met me and told me the same story. He sniffled as he rubbed his eyes to try and clear them of the tears that fell down his cheeks. Through the whole story, Kaneko had kept silent, thinking about the fact that Naruto at least knew something about his parents. Meanwhile, she knew nothing about hers. It made her feel something, she didn't know what, but she knew she didn't like it. It didn't matter right now, so she simply blocked out her thoughts and continued to munch on her various sweets, with the two students enjoying each other's company in comfortable silence. After school, the rest of the classes had been the same. Teacher goes on and on about whatever, while Naruto tried to keep himself entertained by thinking of various other moves. He had seen this Kratos guy have some pretty brutal combos, so he would try those when he gets appropriate gear, as his current equipment wasn't suited for anything on that level of brutality. Currently, he was slowly walking towards nowhere, really, as he was in no hurry or need to get to his apartment, so he leisurely walked while thinking of the many different ways he could try and get back home. One such thought was Fuinjutsu. However, he would need way more experience, and not the gamer kind, to even begin to try and make any sort of time-space seal to make an attempt to get back to his home dimension. He also didn't know how he felt with Rias. She was a kind and lovely girl with passion towards her hobbies and friends, and she certainly didn't hesitate in speaking the truth when it came to herself or others. In other words, he liked her but didn't know if she liked him back or even saw him as a potential love interest, and it made his mind very confused and paranoid at the idea of rejection, much like how Sakura had done. So really, the dungeons were a safe haven for him to clear his mind and vent his frustrations on the monsters within them. Plus, he'd